Commissioners Work Session. Here in the room, we have Commissioner Jerry Willey, Vice Chair Commissioner Scouten, and Commissioner Pam Treese. And on Zoom, we have Commissioner Roy Rogers. First item on our agenda, we do have our new County Administrator, Tanya Angie, aboard. And I'd like to welcome her. We do have in our subsequent agenda topic, introduction of our new CAO. So we'll get to that in a moment here. First item on the agenda is board and leadership communication. Of the commissioners, who would like to go first?
I guess I can start. This is Commissioner Scouten. I'm going to be working with Bob Van Dyke and Mark Rasmussen and a few other people to try to put together a presentation regarding the situation as far as timber harvesting on the Tillamook State Forest, which is a little less than 50,000 acres of that forest is in Washington County. The issues concern whether there should be a habitat conservation plan, which is one way to address the issue of takings of endangered species on those timberlands. I've come to realize that to really do justice to the slide presentations that I've received from Mr. Rasmussen and from other people, I really want to see if we can get some of these people to actually come here and explain their slide presentation to our board and perhaps get his picture as well as that of Bob Van Dyke and the Salmon Center and a few other people. Maybe sometime in the fall we can try to work that in if that's possible. I don't know. I want to throw that idea out to you. If
I could clarify for a second, with your help, this board has had a presentation from the state on the Habitat Conservation Plan and is supportive of that. Mm-hmm. I don't recognize the name of Mr. Rasmussen. Sorry, so I don't know if he's an opponent or a proponent.
Well, it's hard to say. He's a consultant that's been hired and has been on hire for years with the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties. He does timber harvesting analysis for clients, but one of his clients is the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties.
Okay, so now I understand. Yeah. You mentioned his name, but I didn't have the
context. He's with a firm by the name of Mason, Girard, and Rasmussen. They're out of Portland.
But doing work on behalf of
doing consulting work in these areas.
Yeah, well, I think from what I understand, the State Board of Forestry is trying to make a decision by October.
Yes.
On adopting the Habitat Conservation Plan. So it sounds like we need to make room somehow in our work session. Is it our work session or board meeting?
I think either one. I have a feeling that this probably would take somewhere in the neighborhood of about a half hour.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll probably have some questions as well. So let's try and get that into the rolling agenda.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have found that this is a subject that's more complex that I can on my own try to simply cut and paste stuff that I've received from some of these people. I think we need to hear from these people directly, and they can help explain some of their panels and their PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah. Well, let's try this week to identify potential Tuesdays for that.
Okay.
So then these outside speakers can be coordinated.
All right. Should I work through you and through Elizabeth and Tanya? Who would you recommend?
No, I'd say just work it through the CAO.
Okay. Well, in terms of announcements, I will be my turn to meet our new CAO is tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So maybe it's something we can talk about then a little bit. Yeah. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you.
Other than that, I've attended a couple of our community outreach pieces, and I have found them to be instructive and helpful. But I'm also, I think, feeling the frustration of it's hard to really get a critical mass of people to make an appearance where you feel like you've got enough people there to where you can feel comfortable that you're getting a good cross section. But that's just sort of the nature of the beast. It's hard to get people to come. But I'm glad that I've been attending those. I think those have been really useful. They're sort of first times that we've done outreach to some of these, the various groups, and look forward to the last couple over this coming week and Monday of next week.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll go next, and along that same line, Commissioner Scouten, it's I'm so glad that I'm attending, glad that I'm in the room, but it's a hard place to be, which is the point. I recognize that, but I would say the same thing, that when people go into the breakout rooms, the commissioners are left, and there may be one or two, sometimes three people. So it isn't, the dialogue is a little stilted, if you will, but it's still really important. And frankly, the frustrations are great in the community, and the frustrations with what we can and can't do are great with the community, which makes it hard to hear, but it certainly underscores the importance of our role. So,
And if it's a little awkward, it's first steps. Sometimes first steps, anything you do for the first time is going to feel that way, but definitely.
yes.
It's
And
a-
I hope
it's a journey.
I hope we continue to see and hear from more people, and that is not a reflection of the amount of effort that has gone into increasing the audience invitation level. That's there, but getting the people in the door is a different thing. It's also August, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll look forward to hearing the takeaways on those listening sessions, because I wasn't able to join last night. I was on Thursday nights with Latinx community and Latinx community, and I will be on this Thursday night with our BIPOC group. So, so I took quite a few notes on the first one that I sit in on, and so it'll be interesting to compare some notes, I think, when we get all said and done with those. And I don't remember, because I have had so many conversations about giving you an update on the PPE with business recovery centers. Still working with Diane Taniguchi-Dennis. She's a great partner and certainly well connected in that environment. So getting us some additional PPE. If you remember, last week was our first week, and we didn't make it through the entire week with our inventory. And also, we had a little issue with the Beaverton Chamber is closed for 2 weeks because of 2 positive cases of COVID. So we had our PPE inventory physically in the Beaverton Chamber, and it was basically quarantined. They brought in a company to sanitize it and assured us that it was cleaner when they got done with it than when it came in the door. So that product was moved to the Hillsborough Chamber, and the Hillsborough Chamber has been filling those orders this week. And it's over 100 orders, so it's not a few. We have also been working with Diane to get a larger and more consistent supply chain, so we don't have the ebb and flows of today we've got it and tomorrow we don't. So all of that is continuing. It's been handled very, very well, considering the first week we had those significant bumps in there, but that's working really, really well. So we're very fortunate, quite frankly, to have the BRCs in there and doing what they do. I do have a report of the types of industries that requested the PPE in the first 3 or 4 days, and I can certainly forward that on to you. The interesting thing is the largest response was in daycare. So we're trying to at least provide those daycare facilities with free PPE and do what we can, at least in the initial first baby step, so to speak, of getting them up and going for the demand that's coming. Other than that, I don't think I have anything.
That all sounds good. Operating under these new protocols requires a lot of different efforts that we didn't have to do before. So the more we can do to help and get folks back to operation, the better off we are collectively in our community. So thank you for following up on all of that. I join all of you in, Commissioner Rogers, excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry I can't be there today. I'm not feeling 100%, so I hope that I can attend a little bit here, and then maybe tonight, depends on how I do. 3 or 4 other points. One, Clackamas County on the I-205. There's a bit of discussion regarding tolling. They've chatted as a region over there. Obviously, it has some impact on us in regards to our employers here who have folks traveling from Clackamas County to Washington County. And we ought to be a player in that. There's a FHWA letter which invited us to participate. And I would ask that, I think the chair has a copy, and that she'd be allowed to sign that to allow Washington County to participate. So that's number one. In regard to the
Hang on, pause for a second. Colleagues,
Please.
the letter is at your station. Is everybody okay with us signing on to it?
Yes, I think it was sent as an email too, wasn't it, the
Yep.
other day? Yeah,
Yep.
I've seen it, and it's fine, yeah. Thank you for,
Okey doke.
Yeah, good.
Everybody's thumbs up?
Great, thank you. That's we ought to participate. Secondly, I had a conversation with the Sherwood Chamber and the city of Sherwood, and they wanted to extend their thanks to the business group for the recovery money. And so to Jerry, you and Pam, I just wanted to pass along that. So I know you guys were big participants in that. I would echo the comments in regard to these listening. It is difficult when you're seeing such a small group of folks, but it's enlightening. Update on Ostara. We're setting up some meetings. We've been talking. You know, I was appointed to negotiate in regard to our patent, if you will, rights and our agreement with Ostara. We've had attorney meetings, staff meetings, but there's nothing yet to report because we've got to talk with Ostara and then their parent company, it was an English company. So we'll be talking in the next 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. I know Diane can probably give you any more update. I see Mark is there, but I did want to tell you that it's progressing, but slowly. So that's what I have.
Thank you for working with Clean Water Services and CWI on that. I know from Diane that you've provided some really great expertise in working with the outside consultant on that, and we really appreciate your doing that.
Thank you.
So from my standpoint, I'm grateful that the team has put together the listening sessions for us. 3 of the 6 are done, with 3 more to go. As Commissioner Willie mentioned, this Thursday, the Black and Indigenous People of Color BIPOC session. Saturday is a community-wide session, and then next Monday is focused, available for people with disabilities. We do have some frequent travelers who are attending each and every one of them. We have also had the experience of context being provided through the first listening session, and that has tapered off with the subsequent ones. So some of where these listening sessions have come up and where different conversations have been happening is a little bit missing. It's my understanding that the consultant group that has hosted these listening sessions for us will be taking all of the input and will be compiling a report available to us around September 22nd or so that at our meeting on the 29th, we'll be able to discuss that. So just a heads up, we'll have the gift of a wholesome report to digest in that time frame. So that has meant for me that I haven't felt like I've needed to take copious notes during the session, because I know they'll be taking all that input, aggregating it, and stitching it together for me. And as Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Schouten have noted, that, yeah, some of the feedback can be challenging to hear, but that's the whole point of why we're having this, is so that we have the opportunity of that gift from our community. Yesterday, had another instance of the chair mayor's meeting. We provided the opportunity for the mayors to hear from Lamar Wise about the Reimagining Public Safety proposal. And in advance of that, Elizabeth had shared our work session material giving the context of the murder of George Floyd as sort of a
Precipitating, is that the word?
thank you, yes, precipitating event that has really helped galvanize a lot of folks, and certainly Black leaders here in our greater Portland area and Oregon as well. And then leading to the reimagining public safety proposal as well, and really the need to help enable and galvanize, engage, and educate more of our community members, but not on the backs of volunteers, because we in government have a reliance upon having an engaged constituency as well. We also talked about childcare. I've been sharing with you for a few weeks now of concerns on childcare, meetings with superintendents and so forth, and how critical that is as a community resource so that more people can get back to work consistently for our school employees in order to support the launch of the new academic school year. So a lot of problem solving going into that, and we'll talk about that on our agenda as well. I did ask the mayors if they could touch bases with their staff, particularly with their library directors and also with their city managers with regard to city halls, because both of those general locations are places where ballot collection boxes, not the big hunkin' metal ones that sit out at the curb, but the inside ones are generally hosted. That we were lacking in the May election because of closures and COVID. We will be hearing from our staff on Tuesday, September 8th about their plans for ballot collection. And one thing that changed in early June is some administrative changes with regard to the postal system. And so we have heightened community concern about returning of ballots. So I think we have a good, strong story to tell. We'll see how it goes together.
Yeah, I think for the benefit of our new CAO, we have really depended on our library system, our Washington County Coordinated Library System, to be a collection point for our mail-in ballots, and that opportunity wasn't available this spring. Beaverton, Hillsborough, all the libraries up and down and across the breadth of the county were, I think, all closed and were not available for collection.
Yep. And it was particularly acute with urban unincorporated Washington County because the Aloha Library, the Bethany Library, the Cedar Mill Library, and the West Slope Library all are all located within those urban unincorporated areas. So we got an earful from constituents about that.
And Chair, I think your point is well taken about there is, because of the changes at the U.S. Postal Service, I think people want to ensure that their ballot gets to Washington County, and I think we'll see an increase in people bringing them to the ballot box over mailing them this in November.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes. And lastly, I'm getting prepped with Clean Water Services for an upcoming meeting with the Bureau of Reclamation on the Tualatin joint project. So onward, ho we go.
It's the big dam project too.
Yes.
Impound additional water for Hag Lake.
Yep, that damn project. Great, leadership communication to our CAO, your first time. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Anything that you want to draw our attention to right now?
On day 2, I'll just say it's day 2, and I've just had a pleasure meeting with some of you already and also meeting with staff. And the spirit and commitment in Washington County is the word I'm going to use as a descriptor, infectious, which given COVID, that's probably not the best descriptor, yet it really has infected my community, my family and I, and already seeing Pride in Place and us feeling like this is home.
Mr. Rapplier?
I feel like this is home too. Nothing additional to report. Thank you.
It's a little early, don't you think?
Mr. Jackers?
Thank you very much. Diane continues to follow the if you don't feel well, you stay at home. So she's at home. She's certainly feeling better, but she was a little under the weather, so I'm here today. One thing I wanted to note is, as part of Clean Water Services efforts to distribute PPE in partnership with the business recovery centers and with Washington County, we had our first agricultural distribution last Thursday at the Tualatin River Farm over on Minter Bridge. Terrific coverage on KGW too, if you haven't seen that already. We had about 70 people come through to pick up 96,000 masks and 550 bottles of hand sanitizer, serving about 3,000 agricultural workers here in Washington County. Very, very popular. Already looking about how we can meet other needs. We did that in partnership, obviously, with the county, with the OSU Extension Service, with the Soil and Water Conservation District, and NRCS, and the Farm Services Agency. The other piece, in addition to business recovery centers and ag, is we are reaching out to community groups. And I found out last week one of the community groups we're working very closely with is Meals on Wheels. So last week we had, or the week before, with 800 individual boxes of food that were delivered. There was also 5 masks delivered with each box of food. So Meals on Wheels really saw that as a way to get to homebound seniors to have that as well. So I thought that was a nice story. So other than
Disposables or reusables? Because I know you have both.
disposables. So predominantly, what's been going out so far is a lot of this KN95 masks that we've been able to requisition through the county EOC. There are some that we are distributing that are cloth through the BRC, through the business recovery centers. But right now, the interest really seems to be either in the 3-ply ear loop mask like you're wearing, or in the KN95s.
And in the ag event, did you run through your supply or?
No, we were able to meet the demand pretty well there. The biggest problem we had is people would show up and say, well, I need this how many employees I have. And we say, you don't have a big enough truck. So you'll have to come back and get another box. So that was what we actually sent a truck over to a farm that's had about 500 workers there that we were able to distribute to.
Wow. So my next question was going to be, so what are some of the things you learned from this? It sounds like there is a need for some more hosted events or what?
It's interesting. I think the team is still trying to determine what they've learned. One of the things is people seem to really have an interest in the 3-ply ear loop masks. I think we anticipated there would be a higher interest in cloth masks than what we've really seen so far. Also, there's a real appreciation for the hand sanitizer. I think most people are thinking they're coming there just to get a mask, but then they also have this ability to get hand sanitizer as well.
Well, I'm wondering, so we've been getting through the berry season and the wheat harvest and clover seed and grass seed harvest, and there's the cleaning of all that. We're leading up to the grape harvest, and so I'm just hoping that all those workers have the supply that they need to get us through harvest through the middle of October or so.
And we've been in touch with 21 different wineries here in Washington County already to make sure that they're aware that this is available to them. I don't know if that's going through the business recovery centers or through the ag production side of it.
Great. Well, thank you for
Yes, thank you.
helping our community members stay healthy.
If I could comment to that, Mark, it's
Yes.
interesting, the BRC's experienced higher demand for the cloth masks and for the kids' masks, and so they went first, but there was just a high demand for everything, especially the hand sanitizer. So, yeah, there's huge interest in all aspects of PPE. That's good.
Great, great. Thank you. So we're on, oh, are there any questions with regard to tonight's formal agenda? We did have the addition of item 4B, a new action item that is exactly related to topic 5 that's on our agenda. So we'll go through our discussion today. But other than that, are there any questions with regard to tonight's formal agenda? Okay. All righty. I remembered for once. Usually I forget that part. Okay, so onward to the next topic on the agenda, and that is introduction of our county administrator. We have this both on our work session agenda for any back and forth, as well as tonight during our evening business meeting. I really am just so thrilled that you've joined us here in Washington County, Tanya. Tanya Angie is our new county administrator. We are so blessed to have you on board now, here working as our county administrative officer. You come with incredible experience with the city of Boulder as a deputy city manager and dealing with some of the very same issues and challenges that we have here in Washington County. I think it will be a great relief to the various mayors here in Washington County that you come with city experience. In fact, we have one of our local mayors here in attendance today. This is Terry Linehan, the mayor of the city of North Plains. Welcome, Mayor. So I'm sure all of you have seen our media release of July 1st introducing Tanya as our new CAO. Some of the things that we had the opportunity to discuss with her during the interview process is her experience not only with the city of Boulder, but also with Mankato in Minnesota as well. So just incredible experience. And I'm also delighted with her experience working with the International City and County Management Association and the experience and skills that she brings with best known practices here in public service during our 21st century. I say all of that at the same time that I'm grateful for what our interim CAO, Steve Rhodes, did for us. We certainly got more than we expected out of our interim CAO. In addition to, he got more than he bargained for with a public health crisis known as COVID-19. So boy, were we blessed. But I know that we are in very good hands with you, Tanya. I'll turn it over to you at this point. This evening, I'm going to ask her a couple of questions on camera as well as part of the introduction. And I can ask you those very same questions here if you'd like.
Let's do a dry run.
Sure, let's do that. So the first question is, what excites you about serving as the CAO for Washington County?
So this position excites me to work in partnership with the commissioners, the community, and also the organization to really look forward and really think about how do we deliver service excellence for not only today's generation, but the next generation. And I already had spoke to kind of that infectious nature that my family and I are already seeing in this community. And we're experiencing that from our trips to the grocery store, to errands. My 12-year-old son had even expressed, "Mom, I think I can breathe easier here." And I said, "Well, why is that?" "Well, there's more trees here than there is in Colorado." So we're really pleased. We're starting to get settled in our home. My daughter has already made friends in our cul-de-sac, and they're out playing games and taking control of the neighborhood. So I think that's a great sign as well.
I better turn my mic off. Well, clearly you are dedicated to public service. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, public service, being a public servant, this is really my calling, and it's the compass that my family and I live behind. One of the phrases that you'll hear me say is, we are to be stewards of democracy. And what that means is that we are here to uphold the public process and to be working in partnership to collective solutions. And that's collective solutions is all with elected officials, with the organization, and with the community. And part of that is just the changing demands of the community and the complexity of that. Think of what we're going through right now through COVID-19. A year ago, we couldn't have even imagined that. I know previously in Boulder, we started to do emergency planning around a pandemic. Thankfully, we had, because look at where we ended up. But this is the first time that public health has really been the center of emergency plan. We couldn't have imagined that. So what does recovery look like? The county can't be in this alone. We have to be looking to working with our city partners, mayors, our nonprofit organizations, and our community members so that we can be a stronger community. And so that's one of the things that also excites me, because that's the unknown. I don't have the answers, but we can convene and we can collaborate to come to solutions for all. And so that touches some of my approach. And I do think it is important for us to continually look at what are the critical and essential services that we must deliver. And that's going to be incredibly important as we look at COVID-19 recovery and the fiscal impacts that several are feeling. So what are those critical and essential services that we need to deliver in the future so that all within the community can thrive in today's generation and in future generations to come?
Well, is there anything else that you want your community to know about you, how you approach work, or our workforce to know?
Yeah. So another phrase that I say is, I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life integration, and that's because our communities are working 24/7. And so that is my approach to work, is work-life integration. I need to be there to also support my family. My husband's name is Sean. We have 2 children. Liam, who's 12, which we are trying to manage his Fortnite playing right now, and our daughter Claire, who's usually outside playing soccer or some other sport. And so we're really looking forward to this new reality of what does school look like, and making friends. So that's where we feel blessed with just the welcoming nature that Washington County has already extended to our family, to take that kind of burden and worry from our shoulders. So we're thrilled, and we're ready to meet all of you and to be part of this community for a long time.
Commissioners, are there any thoughts or questions you would like to contribute to all of this as well? I know Commissioner Treese, I want to thank you again for being the member of the board to really try and help ensure that we kicked off our welcoming well.
You know, when you're moving into a new home, pizza and a bottle of wine are really important.
Yes.
So, I also just want to say welcome. So glad you're here. I'm looking forward to my lunch with you next week. But in the meantime, just very pleased that you're here. And anything that you need to be more comfortable, both in the work setting and outside, I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Board members that doesn't always turn on his button for the microphone, has been here for 20 years, and, you know, I worked for many years with Charlie Cameron, the Charlie Cameron Building, and then Bob Davis for a long time. We're very fortunate things to have had such a wonderful interim person who filled in for us and got up to speed quickly and really helped us during a challenging 8 or 9, 10 months. We've got a new chapter in the county, and there'll be new board members. There'll be changes. This is my last 4 or 5 months in office before I step down. I've had a wonderful time here at the county. I've enjoyed my 20 years, and I feel a little more easy now that we've got this very important hire done, and I hope and wish you great success and a long tenure here. We've had a tradition of long tenure with our CAO, and I hope that you have a long and fruitful time, and this really is a big piece of your career. I hope that will be very positive, and wish you the best.
I spent an hour with her this morning. She's heard enough from me.
Commissioner Rogers, is there anything you'd like to add?
Really good. So let her get a chance to meet us all and understand the county a little better. I think she'll enjoy it here.
Well, thank you for that. Commissioner Rogers is our longest serving commissioner, and I'd say he's the one that has seen the most change as a commissioner, not only here in the county. I believe in the doing some of the data research, our population was in the 200,000 range during the 1980s, and here we are, topped out over 610,000 plus in 2020. I look forward to the completion of the census process and learning more about that certified population, but it's pretty large. And in that time, our suite of services has evolved and changed, not only for standard county services, but also unique county services, and the need to support the growing urban unincorporated areas of Washington County. And we continue to have a very productive agriculture sector as well as timber here in Washington County. So it's a wonderful county. I've lived here for 30 years, and I'm thrilled to say that I don't need to live anywhere else. I just love it here, and I hope you and your family will feel as rooted here in the community as we do. So, and not only is Commissioner Rogers a native of Oregon, so too is Commissioner Treese. And come football season, watch out is all I can say. Between the Cougars and the Ducks, whew, I try to stay out of the way. Do we have an OSU Beaver on board?
We've
I'm
got
sure
plenty.
somewhere out
Yeah,
here,
we've got
we
plenty.
had a few bees hanging around.
We
so.
did it on the Metro Council, so yeah, I would try and stay between those two as well. So, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. So we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, state and federal legislative update. And I welcome our Interim Director of Government Relations, Elizabeth Mazzara Myers. And yes, we have your team as well with Aaron Doyle and Jagjit Nagra here on Zoom. I don't see Paige today.
Paige should be here, as should Steve Plummer and David Haynes from Van Squake. I see
There's
David,
David. Yep.
and
Hi,
I'm guessing
David.
Steve is clicking a link, as is Paige. Oh,
There's-
I see
there's
Paige.
Paige. Yes, Steve Palmer.
There he is.
There's
All right, we got the team.
Welcome, everyone. It's good to see that you're good and healthy.
So, good afternoon. I'm here, Elizabeth Mazzara Myers, here as your interim government relations director. We have a short presentation today, but I wanted to just provide some context and as you recall moment that when we initially scheduled this, our plan was to come and fill you in on all the terrific funding that was going to be coming from the Phase 4 federal stimulus package. So, that's not happening today. But we wanted to take this opportunity to introduce ourselves to the new CAO, to give the board an update on what we have been doing in 2020, and to sort of give you our next steps between now and when you get the legislative agenda. So if I could have slide number 2. We're going to do a quick update, not only to introduce ourselves, but there have been some portfolio updates for your government relations team And so I will let them each quickly introduce themselves and remind you of their portfolios. And we'll go in order on the slide.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Erin Doyle, Government Relations Manager. I'm the one that has had updates to my portfolio. I am continuing to do land use and transportation and economic development, but we have added both the Fair Event Center grounds and clean water services directly to my portfolio. Those used to be shared amongst the three of us and on your internal GR team. But we found it will be easier and simpler if there is one point of contact for those folks to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind to address the county's needs.
Good afternoon, Chair Harrington, Commissioners. For the record, this is Jagjit Nagra, Government Relations Manager. I want to take a brief moment and personally welcome our new CAO as a lifetime county resident. It's great to have you on board, and I look forward to a number of years working with you. So my portfolio is vast. I cover both public safety and general government. Public safety, in terms of county proper departments, is our juvenile department and our community corrections department. I also liaise with our district attorney's office and our sheriff's office. In terms of general government, I cover assessment and taxation, elections, human resources, public records, and law library. That's not an exhaustive list, but that's the lion's share. Thank you.
Great. I think that makes it my turn. Good afternoon, Chair Harrington, Commissioners. Tanya, a very warm welcome to you, and also look forward to working with you. Thank you for all that you will be doing on behalf of the county. I am the third of our in-house lobbyists, and my portfolio includes our Health and Human Services Department, which, just as a reminder, is very broad. It includes, of course, public health and behavioral health that we've been talking about a lot, but also disability, aging, veteran services, solid waste and recycling, the animal shelter, and more. And then I also work with our housing authority and also our community development office, which is run by Jenny Proctor and administers the important federal programs like CDBG, Home, and others.
So my name is Steve Palmer with Van Scoik Associates, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. We work very closely with the government relations team, David Haynes, who will introduce himself in a moment, and I have been working with the county for a number of years. I think it's more than 10 years now, and pretty much handle all of the issues before the federal government. We not only work closely with the delegation, the Washington County delegation, but the other Oregon state members of Congress, as well as the chairs and ranking members on the committees of Congress that are important to the county, as well as the federal agencies. So try to cover the waterfront on all the issues that you've just heard about from Erin, Jagjit, and Paige, and Elizabeth, and then try to make sure that we can help secure as much funding as possible.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here with you. My name is David Haynes, as way of introduction. As Steve had mentioned, we work together on behalf of the county on all issues that are impacting the county from a federal perspective. It has been great to be working on the team for me personally over the last 7 years. And with that said, I'll pass it back to Elizabeth.
If I could make a comment before you move on in your presentation, I would like to recognize this milestone. Here we are the end of August, and this time last year, we went through the process of hiring this new in-house team. And with that, they have engaged with all of our departments, have really dug in to put together advancements for policy at our state level, but also working much more proactively with our federal delegation, with Steve and with David. I know I've noticed it. And at the same time, during that 1 year time frame, they've had not only a spring session, right, in an even year, but we've also thrown at them the need to be very active and engaged with 2 special sessions so far and a couple of different e-board sets of meetings as well, and then getting in some new process and structure. So hats off to the whole team. We're seeing those results.
I'd like to add to that because I've been involved in 2 pretty in-depth projects, the Get Moving 2020 task force, and I was supported greatly by Erin Doyle there, and then also through the CARES funding and the work that Commissioners Willie and I did. Erin, again, because of her portfolio, supplied us with support. So it's really been helpful to have the team in place and the segmented approach to support for various issues. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I'll have you turn to the next slide, and sort of like the Borg, the chair and I are connected.
Oh,
So I won't read through the list of things that we've done to date, but I will first note, we have taken a portfolio approach, and we try to approach the work in government relations as if we were a firm serving the needs of the county. And so we really see the board and the different departments as clients, and we try to figure out what the needs of the clients are and provide that. And I think that as we develop this model of doing business, I think it really provides the opportunity for each portfolio manager to really own that space. But because we also have seconds in each portfolio, we have somebody that backs them up, there's times that it overflows into other folks' areas. And so I think that's been really great. And Steve and David, I think, have been, word of the year, very nimble and have helped us get through this last year. So without reading the slide, I'll say, as you know, 2020 has been a year like none we've experienced in our lifetime. From late February and the first Washington County COVID-19 case to the Republican walkout that brought the legislative session to a halt back in March. It's hard to remember that was just this year. As an agency, we had to pivot, and it was no different for government relations. These next two slides will provide a reminder of what the government relations has been navigating the last almost 9 months of the year. So again, the chair has mentioned, we had the short session that was even shorter because of the walkout. We worked with our federal partners at Vanscoy on engaging the congressional delegation around some needs, as well as some COVID positive issues, some COVID-19 issues. Of course, the racial justice issues with the death of George Floyd and pivoting. Jajit pivoted very quickly in his portfolio on public safety. As a whole team and the county, of course, planning the community listening sessions, engaging on that, and then special session, emergency board special session, and so on. So it has been a busy year. Next slide, please. As a result, we've had to sort of adjust our priorities, as I think any good team does. And if I could, I think everyone has their assigned areas, so I will just let the team move ahead and talk about the parts that are assigned to them.
So that means me first again, because alphabetically it's great. But one of the things that we've had to adjust to is without being able to meet with folks in person, it really disrupted our communications processes. And we needed, as a government relations team, to find a way to fill in those information gaps with those that needed to know what's going on in Washington County, particularly with the response to COVID-19. And at the beginning of this, not knowing how long we were going to be in these emergency situations, and we were all hoping not this long, but obviously we were wrong there. We had to fill in those information gaps. So one of the things that we as a GR team put together with the chair is a meeting with a regular meeting with the Washington County Caucus at the state legislative level. This helped us kind of inform them of what was going on so that they could respond to constituent inquiries, find out what allowed us to express our needs for the county in order to get state assistance with some of those projects early on, and make sure that the lines of communication were clear and open. We have been planning to work with the Washington County Caucus, help them develop it, and then assist them as they needed with knowing what Washington County's priorities were. At the end of the session, we had started that conversation, but it became very apparent we needed to move a lot faster and set those meetings up regularly. And we did maintain those meetings for about 3 months. In addition, our GR team has been working with other lobbyists who work as government relations professionals for cities within Washington County to also fill in some of those information gaps there. And just overall finding those places where we can be the best messenger and a receiver of information and get it back to the rest of the departments as they need it. So with that, I believe it's Paige with the funding needs.
Actually, that's me. I'll jump in there and thank you. So one of the other things that we saw, and I think that, again, with this team being a year old, One of the conversations we had was about ways that we could take a lead regionally. And it became clear very early on in COVID-19 that the funds that were coming from the federal government were insufficient. We saw that reflected both in the needs of our partner jurisdictions at Multnomah County and Clackamas County, and with the cities within our jurisdiction, given some decisions the state made. And so we worked very quickly to convene sort of a first ever meeting with the city of Portland, several counties, that grew to include, I forget how many, but about 15 or 18 jurisdictions regionally, that we led in a conversation both with our federal delegation, as well as letters delivered directly to gavel holders in key congressional committees. Steve or David, I'll let you guys sort of take from here in terms of what some of the mechanics look like.
So if I can, Elizabeth, this is Steve. We did work very closely with the county, and as Elizabeth just said, the other jurisdictions in terms of formulating a regional position, which had never been done before. And at least in my time, we're working with the county, and it was very effective in terms of not only reaching out to the Oregon delegation, but also to the leadership, to the Speaker of the House, to the Senate Majority Leader, all who acknowledged and appreciated the fact that we were taking this lead. And in that context of all that, we worked closely with the county in terms of, as we talked about, adjusting priorities, closely with the county in terms of the implementation of the CARES Act and the funding that the county received through the state fund. So it's been a real change of direction, and I think someone used the word nimble, and that's kind of the direction we've been trying to focus our efforts on in terms of helping the county and making sure that we secure the funding that's available.
And I will note, while we'll talk about this a bit more, know that these efforts are ongoing, of course. Jajit?
Thank you, Elizabeth. So in regard to adjusting priorities concerning public safety, I think it's fair to say that policies that relate to both COVID-19 and policies that relate to public safety reform are at the forefront of the mind of most legislators and policymakers at the state level, and perhaps arguably at the federal level as well. We're not in a vacuum in this context, right? What's happening and taking place in the national stage has impacts here. What just took place this week in Wisconsin will certainly have ramifications here in Oregon. There's an empowered legislature, as I've mentioned many times. There's even bipartisan support on many of these reform efforts when it comes to police accountability, transparency, promoting community trust. And as far as I can tell, the 6 bills that were passed in the first special session of 2020, all relating to public safety, was, again, just a beginning. And so we're going to see continued reform in this idiom. We're going to see continued refinement of the policies that have even already been released. And from my understanding, there's going to be a minimum of at least 6 bills coming either in the next special session, which would be before the September revenue forecast, possibly, or during the long session. So it's not a question of if, right? It's a question of when. And so the word of the day being nimble, when it comes to our engagement on this, when it comes to our ability to sort of digest, process, and put all of these top-down policy changes into place as an organization, as a county, we are going to need to be nimble, and we're going to have to work closely with our DA, our sheriff, and obviously our board as well. So more to come there, and I'll leave it at that.
Paige, I know you're up next, and if you could go from that right into your state budget adjustments.
Absolutely. Thank you, Elizabeth, and good afternoon again, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. In terms of state budget adjustments, I am very pleased to say for now have been held harmless for the issues and funding streams in my portfolio, which, as a reminder, are principally housing and HHS. There has been a very intentional and very positive outcome set of really programs not on a list for cuts, but being held harmless in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as I have presented to you in previous presentations and memos, there are some uncertainties that lie ahead, particularly in the areas of developmental disability services, as well as public health, as well as the larger behavioral health conversation. And all of those will be just the mix of general fund, lottery funds, other funds, federal drawdowns that we get as a mix. So far, I'm very pleased that we have been able to not even had to work that hard to convince our legislature that cuts to these very critical safety nets should be avoided for now. there are some percolating concerns about budget cuts in the future that are likely to come down, given that we will be having to make cuts in almost all issue areas. But to date, I just wanted to let you know that our public health, behavioral health, and housing programs are in pretty good shape for today.
Paige, do you want to do just a minute on rental assistance and eviction moratoriums?
Oh, sure. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm having
okay.
a technical issue and unable to see the slides. So yes, I will move on to that issue area as well. So one of the things that's more, I would consider a policy issue area and a budget issue area, because they're just so have very short-term impacts from these funding streams, has been rent assistance and eviction and foreclosure moratorium. So currently, Oregon has an eviction moratorium in place through September 30th, which is just around the corner. And then from that September 30th end date, there is going to be a 6-month repayment period where folks who have accumulated rent arrearages are able to pay that back. We are not expecting to see a huge wave of evictions due to the end of the eviction moratorium in September because of that repayment period. But there are policy conversations happening now and funding conversations between myself, our county large partners, or excuse me, our neighboring large county partners, and our associations, as well as our community action agency, which has been delivering the rental assistance dollars of where to go next. And I do want to mention a conversation that I think has come up in a few different arenas around rent assistance and just the mechanics of it, mostly to say that the rent assistance dollars that are distributed from community action go directly into the hands of the landlord and are not considered income for the tenant, which has been an important component around the public charge conversation, where folks who are of different documentation statuses as tenants may not want to be at risk for a public charge ding, if you will, from receiving that funding directly. So the funding has been going to the landlord. And I think that is all I wanted to say. And again, I'm sorry, I was having an issue not seeing the screen. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Paige. And Jajit, I think you had some state budget adjustments comments.
Yeah, so unfortunately, in sort of the public safety and a bit of the general government sphere, as a reminder, last week I mentioned to you that county law library funding was cut at the state level. And so this unique stream of funding, we actually bifurcate the funding and use it both for our conciliation services in our juvenile programming and also for county law library programming as well. So there's certainly there's a large statewide cut there to a tune of $900,000. We also took a hit to grand jury recordation, which was state mandated now. And so, you know, community corrections, if you recall from the prior short session, was one of our funding priorities. And so thank goodness that was held harmless. But if you recall, we were in a $1.25 million hole in community corrections out of the gate, right? That hole was never addressed. And so to say that we were held harmless in this particular budget adjustment is true, but we have not been made whole from the state due to the issues with the funding formula and you know, all of the things that you're probably sick of hearing me talk about at this point. So the state budget adjustments certainly have had disparate impacts on the county, and I would imagine that we're going to continue to see these types of squeezes as state agencies cinch the belt on their budget, as it were.
Great, thank you, Jajit. Before we leave this slide, I do want to do some management of expectations. So when we think about, I know we've all been looking to that September 23rd revenue forecast and what that's going to mean for the county. But I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is that the programs at the county have several funding streams, and the state is only one piece of those. And so the idea, I think, that we'll get a revenue forecast and by X date be able to tell you exactly how the county is impacted, I think is not realistic. I think we'll know how that comes as it comes. And we've got Jack, who's a tremendous CFO, and will continue to inform the government relations team. We'll continue to provide the information we have for him. But I just wanted to make sure that we weren't looking to that date as sort of the circle of the X, and we know now what the outcomes are going to be. Thank you. Next slide. So as we move on to the next phase of building our legislative agenda, this was the government relations' first opportunity to move through this process together as a team. So in the spirit of intentionality, we wanted to go back and make sure we all understood the terms we use to frame the county's needs and strategy. We needed to ensure we are building a framework that can guide us through this and future legislative planning processes. When we come back to you in October, we will reflect this slide back to you as we outline the principles, priorities, and initiatives to ensure we're all in agreement about how these pieces fit together. And very quickly on this slide, the guiding principles are those big things that are built based on the strategic goals and guidance of the board. These don't change very often, and when there's a new strategic plan, maybe those get updated then. And sorry, that next slide is sort of hard to read, but there's two kinds of legislative priorities. There's a policy priority and a budget priority. The reason I want to pull those out is typically we'll find legislative priorities maybe once a year. Maybe they'll get updated as we sort of see things happening. But budget priorities are going to have to be timely. When we see things shifting, we're going to be moving. We might not change the priority actual written agenda, but we'll always be flagging them for you. And then a county initiative. This is a longer term project, like, say, a courthouse. Or a major transportation project. So these are things that, or clean water services. So these are things that we'll identify, they'll probably be around for a few years. We might update how we understand them or whether we're seeking state or federal funds, but those will sort of stick around. Next slide, unless there's questions. Good, thank you. So here we are today. Whew. Okay, so we have gone through our process with the departments. We have 12 legislative concepts that have been submitted to the team. These are both policy priorities and budget priorities. The next step for us is to meet with our new CIO, with the deputies and department heads to flesh those out, to be checking back in with you, and then we'll be coming back with the state priorities as part of the draft agenda. This year, unfortunately, we don't have the opportunity of David and Steve being here in person with us. And so we'll be working with them and the portfolio managers to check in with the departments to see what kind of federal priorities are going to be coming to the surface. These will be obviously ongoing programmatic priorities as well as clearly COVID-19 funding issues. Next slide. So finally, I want to say, I just learned how to use SmartArt in PowerPoint, and if you haven't found it yet, it's amazing. So I'm sorry if this is a little bit overdone, but I got pretty excited about it, so thank you. So here we are, heading towards September, that revenue forecast. You won't see us again until we come back to you the end of September. Between now and then, again, revenue forecast, legislative days, and a potential special session. Let's remember that's separate from legislative days. Sometime in early October, we'll be meeting with the CAO and the draft agenda, and then by the 20th of October, you all will have the draft agenda to you. We have it scheduled that agenda will be for sure in your packets that Thursday or Friday before, so you'll have a few days of opportunity for that in advance. We'll have a week or two and then come back to finalize that. And then again, there's another budget, state revenue forecast. We come back with our final update for the summer, or excuse me, for the year, and then we're off and running into 2021. I have to say, the GR team and I just had a planning session a couple of weeks ago where I spent 3 hours thinking through some of these definitions, talking through the process, updating the timeline, ensuring that it fit with what we need as a team, what was reflected given the year that we've had, and sort of timing it to the other jurisdictions that we're working with, so we're all sort of moving in the same time frame. And it felt really good. I think that I had truncated the timeline earlier in the year when things were different. And I think we're here now, and this feels like a very, it feels like an authentic, reflective process. And I'm confident that you'll all be pleased with the legislative agenda. So that's what I have. The team is available for any further comments or questions.
Questions from commissioners first?
Yeah,
Commissioner
just,
Willie.
I guess I like to be looking downfield a little bit more than this, realizing that that budget is certainly going to be a top priority coming into the next session, as is public safety and a variety of those. Do we see any other issues either resurfacing or some new issues? So in other words, environmental things, are there any of those things that are going to be brought forth again in the next session, do you see, or are we going to be pretty much focused on those two major issues?
You know, this was a conversation that we had with the GR team, and I'll let them all speak for themselves because they're all very bright. But I think what we came to was budget and public safety. It's sort of hard to imagine at this moment in time there being other really large pieces of legislation being brought forward, although we have 100 legislators and we will see what they do, 100 plus. But Jajit, Aaron, Paige, thoughts on this or rumblings about other things that might come forward? And I'd love to hear from Steve and David too in terms of the federal stuff.
You know,
Well, I mean, my quick gut check
sorry.
at the state level, sorry, Steve, at the state level would be that budgetary items and items related to public safety would be the main tickets. Having said that, I also just participated in a work group around property tax reform.
Right, yeah.
I'll say that again, property tax reform. That's a huge, massive issue in Oregon, thanks to Measure 5 and Measure 50. So I'm not convinced yet that there's going to be further dialogue around that. I think it's inevitable that we'll see some other smaller pieces. But what I can say is that in terms of my portfolio, I see nothing else on the horizon that's significant enough to even mention to you at this point.
Though let's do remember, there is an election in November, and so there's opportunity for change in personnel.
The one comment I wanted to make is that I'm curious to see, and others I know are, about exactly how the legislature is going to conduct itself in COVID. It's one thing to sort of micromanage a very tightly choreographed session that has just a few bills in it. But, you know, what about the lobbyists and the government affairs people and all the other people who come to the Capitol normally? And what about hundreds of bills? And what about an older building that goes back to the 30s with poor ventilation and a lot of older legislators? How that's all going to be conducted and whether they can figure out some way to do this from distance, all are questions with no answers at the moment.
Well, and for sure, and I do want to get to Steve and David, but for sure, one of the things we've talked about is one of the most valuable times for a lobbyist is standing outside of a committee room waiting for a legislator to come out when you can grab them for 2 minutes. And the idea of not having those opportunities that you create sort of shifts the kind of lobbying you do. The good news is everybody's on the same playing field in terms of our opportunity to affect change in terms of that. But Steve or David, thoughts on what's next? Oh, pardon me. Oh,
Before
Chair.
we switch over to Fed.
Sure, yeah, of course.
Away from
Pardon me,
state, with Commissioner Willie's question, I'm taken aback a little bit to what the governor talked about after the closure of the spring session and before the first special session, and that was reminding us all that she has not forgotten about climate change. And so that is the subject that, as we think about 2021, I'm wondering not if, but how that topic comes back to the forefront. Because we're certainly hearing about it in our listening sessions, so the community's not forgotten about it. And certainly with COVID, we had the opportunity to see places in the world with having stay-at-home restrictions had better air quality than they've had in a while. Now we're having wildfire issues here, not only in the West, but here in Oregon as well. And so it's not gone. But I do agree that the economy, which hurts now and is going to continue to hurt for a couple of years according to the forecasts, not that I want it to, but it certainly is part of our equation. So, and I also want to say, Jagjit, you once again demonstrated why I am totally thrilled that the four of you are in place here at the state and Steve and David at the federal level. Because knowing that you're engaged on property tax reform is music to my ears. So I know that as one member of this 5-member commission, we are on a journey together and we are well served. So thank you, everyone. Now, back to Steve and David.
If I may, before Steve and David, sorry, you keep getting cut off. But to talk about the climate issue that I think came up both in Commissioner Willie's question and your comments, Chair Harrington, there are many things going on already. When the governor stated that she did not forget that climate reforms needed to happen at the state level, she signed an executive order that is now directing state agencies to do some very particular things. And land use and transportation and myself have been starting to have the conversation about what conversations we need to have with you, because there are some very specific departments who have been impacted and told to go out and do things within the confines of what an executive order can encompass. And that includes the Department of Transportation, the Department of Environmental Quality, and land use and the Land Conservation and Development Commission and department that supports them. So all of those things are already starting to happen, regardless of whether or not another attempt at a carbon pricing bill comes forward. So those are areas where we're going to be having to pay attention, not just to the budget implications for that, but also the impacts it has to potential projects, new requirements. And these are long-term efforts that are going to be taking place at a regulatory level, perhaps with some legislation to back it up. But then down the road, even in the land use arena, they're talking about perhaps re-examining some of the land use goals, which is a major undertaking that the state would have to do and would have to find funding for, which then complicates the budget conversations we're going to be having, given that we are fairly certain we will be in a cuts budget for this next biennium. So it's going to be about both balancing the policy issues that continue to come forward, the ongoing work the state's doing in a regulatory fashion, but also the impacts it has on those agencies' budgets, and therefore the budgets of how we approach projects and things of that nature. So all of that is definitely on the table. Whether or not there is a big push for another bill is still unclear, because there is a price tag that comes with it. There may not be a budget for it, but I agree with Chair Harrington's reminder that neither the governor nor the leadership nor the community have forgotten about it. So there will be something. It's just a matter of how big is the scope of it and what are the budgetary impacts of it. So I just wanted to, we're tracking it. We just don't know what it looks like at the end of the day.
Any further thoughts on state before we let Steve and David?
Just to
Yeah,
follow
if
up
I
what
could.
Erin-
Oh, sorry, Paige,
ahead,
could you hold one sec?
I just wanted to emphasize, I just read something this morning. Erin, thanks for reminding me on the ODOT's focus on prioritizing their projects has to have a greenhouse gas reduction impact on that, and they get a higher priority. Those projects will get a higher prioritization for funding. So yeah, stay tuned with how broad that stroke is.
Thanks. Sorry, go ahead, Paige. Thank you.
No, sorry. Thank you, Elizabeth. I just wanted to round off the conversation by saying that, yes, I think for your government relations team, we will all be thinking through every priority that we are bringing forward to the state, as well as any bill, working under the guiding principles that we have to evaluate concepts that other jurisdictions or organizations or legislators are bringing forward. There is an unlimited number of bills that is allowed in a long session. Now, whether the presiding officers allow so many bills to move forward and actually be scheduled for hearings and things like that is a different question that we don't have the answer to yet. But just to leave it open that legislators do get an unlimited number of bills that they can each introduce, as well as governor, agency, and committee bills. So we will likely have a menu of policy options to consider, but we don't know what those are just yet. The one thing that I wanted to circle back to in my earlier comments about rent assistance and the eviction moratorium and foreclosure moratorium is just that the repayment period, if no other policies or funding streams are enacted between now and the regular long session in 2021, is that the rent arrearages repayment period will end right in the middle of the legislative session. So that's likely to be a conversation as well. But again, in closing, I think your entire team is going to be very intentionally thinking about the state of Oregon being in an over $1 billion budget shortfall for the next biennium and how to best protect the county's essential services and programs that we operate on behalf of our communities and avoid cuts in those areas.
Okay. Steve and David?
I'll go ahead and jump in and then let Steve talk as well. As we look at the outlook for the rest of the year and moving into next year, we're continuing to work with the county to identify the priorities on the budget and appropriations and policy areas that we're discussing. And as the congressional agenda and administration agenda continues to evolve, we're also evolving those priorities along with the county. We're moving into this next season that we're discussing. and we're moving into a season that we normally would be coming out to the county as well. I think, as Elizabeth mentioned, and meeting with each department on the different priorities. And so we certainly welcome and appreciate the opportunity to continue to work with each department on hearing about those priorities and establishing those priorities. But looking at the outlook for the next few months and moving even into next year, one of those is certainly going to be overshadowing. We're going to continue to see the prioritization of any kind of phase 4 COVID legislation that Congress is able to pass. The White House is also working with that. Negotiations right now are strained, but some of that is both the House and Senate are out of session during the August recess. And so we expect when the House and Senate come back into session in after Labor Day, some of those negotiations to continue. But the state and local funding continues to be a major issue, as well as liability protections continues to be major issues of debate for any next stage legislation. Another one, as well, as we approach the end of the federal fiscal year in September, is the FY21 appropriations. We're expecting a continuing resolution, an extension of current funding several months into the year. National Flood Insurance Program is also going to be coming up. The reauthorization, the expiration of the program comes at the end of September as well. So Congress will need to address that issue in September. And then, of course, with the election coming in November, we know that priorities on the federal congressional administration side could come. And if Democrats take over the White House or in the Senate, we'll certainly see a continued emphasis on climate change and climate change legislation. The House has introduced and presented and released several ideas on climate change. And so we'll continue to see those prioritized. And so I think there are one or two other issues as well that Steve is going to address.
Thanks, David. Let me just add that one of the issues that is not being addressed this year is infrastructure. The House has passed a $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill, which a third of which was for surface transportation and the reauthorization of the FAST Act, which we know the county's priorities in infrastructure are huge. Transportation are enormous. The Southwest Corridor is critically important. So we've been working closely with the government relations team in terms of trying to make sure, and led by Aaron and Elizabeth, trying to make sure that those programs get done if they can. If not, as David alluded to, we anticipate that next year there will be a refocus on infrastructure. If President Trump is reelected, it is really the one priority that he campaigned on that hasn't been enacted thus far. And we know that if Vice President Biden gets elected, that will be a priority, as he's talked about several times. So infrastructure will clearly be a priority for us working with the county next year. And I will say too, just generally, and I'll turn it back to Elizabeth and the GR team, is that in the first year of any presidential term, there's an enormous amount of legislation that happens. Particularly if the Democrats do take control of the White House and possibly the Senate, they will try to move legislation as quickly as possible through the Congress next year. And knowing that you have two years, primarily the first term of any presidency, to get major legislation enacted. So as David alluded to, we anticipate not only infrastructure, but a lot of climate change focus and a real change in terms of trying to adjust some of the tax issues and some of the other issues that are important to the county that we'll be working with you all on. So with that, Elizabeth, happy to turn it back to you and Chair Harrington.
So any further questions before we wrap up?
I have a couple.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
actually, I really want to say that congratulations both to the federal team and the state team, because you answered questions that I had, and now I don't need to ask them. Because I had two key questions around the date linkage for each, the federal and the state legislation, and I was also very curious about expectations, and I needed your help, Steve and David, to be clear about what my expectations should be between now and the end of the year with regard to the federal level as well as into next year. So good job to all of you. I do have one one comment I'd like to share, and that is that you've all done a really good job with today's presentation for me. It helped gel a lot of information, but it's also built on your regular reports. So I really feel very well served to be on the journey of work together with you. And I know I've said it already today, but I can't speak more highly of the work that you have all been doing on our behalf. Here's the surprise question for you.
Jajit, you can answer whatever it is.
Actually, the question is directed at Steve and David, because I remember our meeting in the fall of last year after the new team was in place, pre-COVID, and really hoping that with the new in-house team, we could be far more proactive. So here we are, not quite a year later, but I wanted to put you on the spot and say, what do you think? How have we done? Have we got things set up the way that you were hoping, or is there anything you would like to say or share about working with the team that I've already expressed I think very highly of? I love the fact that Aaron is laughing.
There's only one correct answer.
Chair Harrington, I will say, having worked with the county for a number of years, I have said it to you, and I'll say repeat it again, that it's been an incredibly refreshing approach that the government relations team has taken and the board has taken, because we've worked with the county in a number of years, but we are so much more integrated into the team and so much more involved in not only carrying out your wishes and desires with the congressional delegation, but also being a part of the development of those. We feel very fortunate to work with the county. It's been a challenging year, as we've all said, especially in terms of trying to, using the word nimble again, trying to address and shift focus and priorities to the COVID response and relief legislation. But we really feel like between the state and local funding that came through in the CARES Act and positioning the county and the regional cities and other counties to be a part of the delegation and the more national focus, we feel very fortunate that the county is really stepped up and taken a leadership role, and we're fortunate to be able to work with you. So no, I think our expectations have been very happy and happily fulfilled. I think we're ready to really kind of jump in again now that everybody's got their feet on the ground on the government relations team, so that we can help advocate for the county next year on some of these other issues that we were talking about.
Yeah, and if I might, to that point, I think if I can just take you back a year ago, and I'm watching time, I know we're just about out, that, the GR team came on in August, September, and we presented an agenda, I think, sometime in November. And so there was very little time to sort of be thoughtful about that process. Jajit worked with Steve and Dave very quickly to update the federal agenda. So this will be the first time that we've gone through a process of actually assessing what the needs of the county are. And really prioritizing them. And so I hope that when you see the outcome, that you'll see, again, the intentional work that we're doing to represent the county.
Thank you. If I could also just follow up. Steve and David, we only have one more request for you, and that's the next time you come to Washington County, bring a couple of suitcases full of that $100 bills that you guys like to print there in D.C. And sticking with that, the thing that we talk about here, obviously, a lot is our budget deficits and how we're going to fill in some of the holes in our budget. Our federal government seems to only know how to turn on the printing press. So is there any conversation about the significant federal deficit that we are dealing with and will continue to deal with through generations?
It's a great question, and I'll say in the very near term, one of the reasons why David alluded to phase 4 or the next piece of legislation in terms of addressing COVID relief is the fact that while the House passed a significantly larger bill, a $3.5 trillion bill to the HEROES Act about 2.5 months ago, the Senate could not reach an agreement about how much more money they wanted to spend. And there are a number of senators, Republican senators primarily, who said they would not support any legislation with significant increases in spending until they at least saw how the money that they had already approved had been implemented. I do think looking forward ahead to next year, there's already been talk by President Trump about trying to reduce the federal payroll tax. And Vice President Biden has said that he would look to repeal the tax cuts of 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, that went to largely the corporations, the corporate tax, business taxes. So that I think there is a realization that more needs to be done in terms of deficit reduction. I'm not sure Congress has the will necessarily to put the brakes on entirely.
Commissioner Rogers, is there anything you'd like to add or any questions?
Unmute, I'm sorry. No, I don't think there is at this point. I always grimace, Steve, when you say how bad we were in the past and how good we are now, but that's, you and I have worked together a long time, so I understand that perspective, right?
Great. Anything else, commissioners? All right, thank you. Job well done, everyone. And thank you for staying healthy. And for Steve and David, I just want to point out that on the county's coronavirus page, we have 2 new indicators. So just want to highlight that. And if you're looking for information on how we're doing with regard to school reopening or how we're doing for other metrics, go have a look. But thanks for staying healthy there in DC. Bye, everybody. Okay, now we'll move on to a break for 15 minutes. How wonderful is that? So we'll see you back here at just about 3:45. Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers, are you there?
Chair, it's been noted that we did not recognize Mark in his haircut, his new do. Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, well, welcome back from our break. We're going to pick back up in the work session. Our next topic, we have 2 remaining topics on the agenda. And the first one is the Metro Affordable Housing Bond Program. So welcome to Comey Calavar, the Director of Housing Services, and Shannon Wilson, our interim Housing Development Director.
Manager. Good afternoon, Jay Harrington and commissioners. I am Comey Calavar, Director of Housing Services. We are here this afternoon to share a proposed slate of affordable housing developments for your board's consideration and action to receive Metro Affordable Housing Bond Funds. As you know, the Metro Bonds was approved by voters in November 2018. The Metro Bond generated $652.8 million to be invested in the production of approximately 3,900 units in the 3 counties, Washington, Multnomah, Clackamas. And the housing will be regulated as affordable housing for 60 years. Washington County, which is one of the 3 implementing jurisdictions in the county, the other implementing jurisdictions are Beaverton and Hillsborough. They all receive their own allocations. Our allocation is $116.5 million. And our goal is to produce, or our target is to produce 814 units of affordable housing with that allocation. Earlier this summer, our phase 1 project, the Viewfinder, broke ground in Tigard, and they are under construction. And those are 81 units, also funded from the county's share of the Metro Bond. Today, we are presenting a slate of 7 developments for your consideration. Combined, these 7 projects would add 623 units of affordable housing and bring $217 million of capital investment into the county. This investment is possible because the applicants were able to leverage the Metro bonds approximately 3-to-1. So we are investing about 80 and we're getting 217 million of direct construction. Before I hand it over to Shannon to provide a detail on all the proposed projects, I want to briefly describe the process that brought us here. I know it took a while, but it was for a purpose. So the applications got delayed because of COVID, but then we received them towards the end of May. The first review was staff review for threshold, compliance with our local implementation strategy that your board approved in December 2019. We also had a third-party financial analysis firm called High Impact Financial Analysis, LLC, do an underwriting review, similar to what you do at a bank. So once again, we're keeping our fiduciary responsibilities very high on our agenda. And then the third piece was the evaluation committee. The committee is comprised of several persons. Sheila Greenlaw-Fink, she's representing the Housing Advisory Committee. Val Valfrey, also representing the Policy Advisory Board. Val is the former housing director and currently Forest Grove City Councilor. Kim Armstrong from Land Use and Transportation Department. Jack Lane, Support Services Director and Chief Financial Officer for Washington County. Jenny Proctor, Office of Community Development. Javier Mena from City of Beaverton, and then Patrick McLaughlin, who is a staff at Metro. So finally, we also got input from Housing Advisory Committee last Tuesday. So thank you for the evaluation committee members and also our colleagues from county administration to get us here. These projects you'll be presented have been vetted based on development priorities and goals established in our local implementation strategy, as well as financial feasibility. We review the development budgets as well as the operating budgets to ensure the projects will be built to standard, durable, and can survive the 60-year affordability requirement, at least, well, with the repairs, of course. So we look forward to receiving your feedback for these later projects. Shannon is our interim housing development manager, and she will walk through a PowerPoint with the details, and then we'll answer your questions that you may have. Thank you.
Great. Well, good afternoon, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here with you today. Next slide, please. So first, I wanted to, Comey talked about some of the background with the Metro bond, and so just to put us all on the same page and kind of level set, I did want to briefly go over the Metro framework unit production targets for the bond, as well as the specific Washington County goals. So there on the slide, you can see our total unit production goal of 814 units. Housing for extremely low-income households, those are households at 30% of the median family income. So that goal is 334 units, and these are all 334 units of that 814 total. And then half of the units are family size, so their 2-bedroom units are larger. Then the Washington County specific goals that are outlined in our local implementation strategy are that 100 of the 814 units are permanent supportive housing units, so those are targeted to serve chronically homeless individuals. There's also a minority, women, emerging small business, MWSB contracting percentage, which is 20% aspirational goal. And then we also identified in the local implementation strategy a local nonprofit set aside. So $25 million out of our total allocation for the county set aside for small nonprofit affordable housing developers located in Washington County. So the pie chart on the right of the slide shows our total allocation for Washington County. And for the purpose of this presentation, when I say Washington County, I mean the Washington County's implementation area for the Metro Affordable Housing Bond, which is the part of the county that's within Metro Service District, which generally excludes the western part of the county, North Plains and Banks, and then also the area of the county that's outside Beaverton and Hillsborough because they receive their own allotment of Metro Bond funds, and then they also have their own associated targets with that. So that pie chart there shows by percentage the allocation Of Metro Bond funds currently. So you can see 10% of the funds were allocated to our Phase 1 project, which your board approved earlier this year and started construction, as Comey mentioned. Then 68% was released in this NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, 80 million, with the remaining 22% to be allocated. And I also want to highlight, as a part of this presentation, we're just getting started with our implementation of the Metro Bond, but in our local implementation strategy, we do identify putting together an annual report and bringing that back to your board each year as we continue our progress with this program. So our Notice of Funding Availability was issued in March of 2020, as Comey mentioned, so it has kind of the timeline there for you and describes that evaluation process that Comey talked about. So we worked through those 4 steps, and we're excited to share this slate of projects with you. So our recommendation, as Comey mentioned, is so we have 6 projects that we are recommending from this NOFA. We have an additional project that we will share once we get through these NOFA applicants. There were 7 applications that we received for this NOFA. So one of the projects, through our evaluation process, it was recommended that we negotiate with that developer and potentially bring that project forward at a later date. There were some issues identified related to financial feasibility and with the project sponsor, and so we do want to reserve that right to negotiate with them, bring it back at a later time. So these projects achieve the development priorities outlined in our implementation strategy and also work towards achievement of the Metro targets and our county-specific goals. All of the projects, so they're all new construction projects. They all are ready to begin construction within the next 6 to 18 months, depending on their financing structure. And with regard to advancing racial equity, which is a key component of the Metro Bond implementation through the region and in our county, nearly all of the projects are either sponsored by or have a partnership with a culturally specific organization, either as a development partner or as a service provider. So with that, I'll dive into the first project. So these projects are listed in alphabetical order by their current project title name. So this is not a ranking of projects, but just a way to put them in an order. So I'm just going to run through these brief overviews. You have longer, more detailed overviews in your packet, but this is just to provide an overview and then happy to take questions. So the first one is the Aloha project. It's located at the intersection of 174th Avenue and TV Highway, Tualatin Valley Highway, proposed at 82 units. Some of the key features of this project is that it's well located there right off of TV Highway, which is a high-frequency transit line with bus line number 57 running through there. Also near Tualatin Hills Nature Park and near basic services and jobs. Another key feature is this is a little bit more detailed to the MWESB contracting. So it's minority, women, disadvantaged small business, disadvantaged business enterprise and emerging small business. And so for this project, they have a 30% aspirational goal. So our county goal is 20%, their goal for this project is 30%. And there, for each of these, you can also see the unit mix there by bedroom size and by income targeting. So the second project is the Basalt Creek project. It is sponsored by Community Partners for Affordable Housing. It's a proposed 116 unit development. It's in the Basalt Creek Community Plan area. So it's an area that is really combines portions of Tualatin and Wilsonville. And this site is the one site in that planning area that is zoned for multifamily development. It's zoned high-density residential, so all the other land in that area is zoned either for lower density residential or commercial or some other use. So the location is really a key feature of this project, an opportunity to be in an emerging high-opportunity area, or what we perceive will be a high-opportunity area. It's close to Tualatin High School. And it is currently served by some transit and likely will be served by additional transit lines in the future. This project also includes a number of 3-bedroom units with 18 3-bedroom units for larger families. The third project is Forest Grove Family Housing Project. It's sponsored by DCM Communities and is also a partnership with the Housing Authority of Washington County. So it's envisioned to be a turnkey project. So DCM Communities would develop the project and the Housing Authority be the long-term owner and operator of the project. It's a smaller project, 36 units located in Forest Grove, with partners with Bienestar and Sequoia Mental Health and Latino Build. And really does target the family population based on the demographics there in Forest Grove and has a 35% aspirational goal for minority and women in emerging small business contracting. The fourth project is Plaza Los Amigos project, sponsored by Bienestar and Reach. So those are two nonprofit developers. Reach is operates throughout the region. Bienestar is local to Washington County. So they've partnered together to bring their different skill sets together to make this project a reality. So they're proposing 113 units. It's right near the Cornelius Fred Meyer Shopping Center. It's actually just adjacent to it, just north of that Fred Meyer. There's some vacant land there, if you're familiar with that area. So they also have a 35% aspirational goal for minority and women emerging small business contracting. And here you can see as well a lot of larger size units, so 61 2-bedrooms and 12 3-bedroom units. They also have a goal of 16 permanent supportive housing units as a part of their unit mix there. The project is also really well located, not just to the Fred Meyer, but also to local schools and parks as well there in Cornelius, and close to the Line 57, which runs along Highway 47. The fifth project, Terrace Glen project, is sponsored by Related Northwest. They are a private developer that works along the West Coast. They're newer to our area, but definitely an experienced developer. This site is just right across the street from Washington Square Mall, so very well located with regard to transit, because there's a transit center there at the mall, as well as jobs, and also well located next to parks and Metzger Elementary schools as well. This is the largest project. We are in our slate of proposed projects today with 144 units. As you can see, a wide variety of bedroom sizes from studio to 4 bedrooms. The 3 and 4 bedroom units are combined, so there are 3 4-bedroom units and 12 3-bedroom units. So 4-bedroom units, you hardly see those. They're very uncommon in affordable housing, but definitely very much needed, especially in trying to address provide culturally specific housing or housing that's really accessible to a variety of cultures. And the sixth project, so the final one for this NOFA, is the Tigard Senior Housing Project. This is sponsored by Northwest Housing Alternatives, NHA. They're a developer a nonprofit developer that works throughout the state. This project is proposed at 58 units, and it is on land that NHA had been awarded from the City of Tigard. So City of Tigard owns the site. It's right next to the Tigard Senior Center. The city had a request for proposals process, so a competitive process, and selected NHA, Northwest Housing Alternatives, as a part of that. So the land will be leased to the project at no cost or not very nominal fee, so a long-term ground lease for the project. And this is the only senior housing project in our proposal today as well. That's why they're all 1-bedroom units based on their experience with that population. And they also contacted me before this presentation to let me know that their goal for MWESB is actually 30%, not the 20%. So I wanted to be sure I mentioned that as well. So those are the 6 projects recommended out of that applied for our NOFA, our Notice of Funding Availability. So in addition to that, we do have one additional project that we are considering collaborating with the city of Beaverton to provide. And so throughout this whole Metro Bond process, through our development of our local implementation strategy, throughout all of those negotiations around the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement with Metro, we have really worked closely with the jurisdictions of Beaverton and Hillsborough. And as a part of that, our implementation strategy and also an IGA we have with the city of Beaverton, it's that the county and the city can work together on particular Metro Bond projects. And so Beaverton released a funding solicitation in December of 2019 for $9 million. They received 3 applications for that. The $9 million was intended to fund one project. And so this project that we're recommending to you as part of this slate is a project that was really tied for first place. And so Beaverton had requested the county's support of this project with the county's allotment of Metro Bond funds. And with the idea that while the project is located in Beaverton, those units will count towards the county's goals that we have for the Metro Bond. And Beaverton also has committed $400,000 of its own resources, so those are not bond funds, but in addition to just other resources they have available that they have committed to this project. And so this next slide gives you an overview of that project, a South Cooper Mountain project sponsored by Bridge Housing Corporation. The address there is, might seem a little unfamiliar. There's a lot of new streets in that area, but it is near 175th and Shoals Ferry Road. It's right across from the new Mountainside High School. So well located in a high opportunity area. It has a good mix of units with 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units that are proposed. And the site, even though it is within the city of Beaverton, right across the street in Shoals Ferry is Tigard's River Terrace development, which is in the city of Tigard and within the county's bond implementation area. So that was a consideration as well while we were preparing this information to bring to you, is its proximity to our implementation area. So that project is 75 units total that would be proposed in the South Cooper Mountain area. And the reason Beaverton chose another project rather than this one is that there was another project also in the South Cooper Mountain area that had a lot of the same features and a lot of the same experienced developers and good aspects of project design, but that other project could produce more units for the same Metro Bond investment. So this project is a little bit smaller, still well leverages the Metro Bond funds, and still adds as important and needed units in a high opportunity area. So the next slide gives you a sense, it's a little bit hard to see, but it gives a sense of geographic dispersal. That's an important component of our implementation strategy and one that's maybe a little bit more unique when compared with Beaverton and Hillsborough, just looking at such a larger area. So here on the map, if you can see it, so red is the city of Beaverton projects, yellow the city of Hillsborough just has one at this time, and then blue is Washington County. So just to give a sense of that geographic dispersal, we were really pleased with the level of diversity in projects with regard to their location that came in through the NOFA. So the next slide, or the next couple of slides are a couple different ways to look at these projects, all these projects that I've just gone over in a rolled up way to look at how they come together as a whole portfolio and how they help us achieve our Metro Bond goals and targets. So in this chart, you can see I have the phase 1 project on there as well, since that is working towards our goals. So that is an existing project again, and then the 2020 NOFA are those 6 projects that I outlined, and then the Bridge Cooper Mountain is the Beaverton project. So combined, those 8 projects, including our phase 1 project, get us to a production of 704 units towards our overall goal of 814 of the Metro Affordable Housing Bond. And you can see how we're faring with the other targets as well there on that chart. The next slide gives you a sense of that, really provides the same information as the chart on the other page, but in a more visual way. So that chart in the upper left-hand it gives you a sense of our work towards those Metro framework and county goals. The chart on the right-hand side gives a sense of the allocation of bond funds as a percentage. And then the bottom right illustrates the leverage of this Metro Bond investment. So combined an investment of $85.5 million, which results in a leverage of $164.8 million. So the total development cost of $250.3 million, which is really the total investment within our county with these projects. So just briefly go over next steps. So we are looking forward to hearing your feedback today, and then hope you will consider approval of providing concept endorsement on September 1st. And concept endorsement is the first step in Metro's process. So if these projects receive concept endorsement, they would each come back before you for final approval and come back at separate timelines depending on when those projects are ready to start construction. So this is really, in a sense, awarding funding, giving a funding reservation at this time, and then they would still come back to you for final approval once they have all their funding sources and are really ready to break ground and start construction. So your board would consider concept endorsement approval on September 1st. Metro staff will then consider approval of concept endorsement later in the month. We're hoping that could be completed by mid-September. And then in addition to what we have here today, we have 2 pipeline projects as well. So the one NOFA project that we're negotiating on, and then also another project that could provide a significant number of PSH units. So just to let you know that those projects are in the works and something that we would be bringing before you soon as well.
It is an acquisition we are working on, so we'll be coming to you hopefully in October, latest by November, when we have the details. Acquisition that will help with our permanent supportive housing goals, because if you look at the chart, that's where we need to do more work.
So we feel with this recommendation that the county is well positioned to achieve the metro and county-specific targets and goals for the bond program. And as I mentioned to you, we will provide regular annual updates as well on our progress going forward. So with that, we are open to taking any questions or comments that you may have. Thank you.
So in addition to the commissioners here in the room, we also have Commissioner Rogers joining us by Zoom. So in the room, commissioners, comments, questions?
I don't know how far into details you are, but I know in recent past, the city of Hillsborough, for example, these are all along the Max line. They did need as much parking as the zoning had initially required. Are we running into that issue? Could we increase our units potentially if we perhaps be more creative about parking requirements? What are your thoughts? I'll just throw this out as a sort of an unformulated question to you. I don't know what the requirements are just offhand as far as parking, but are there some opportunities there for us?
Right, it does vary by jurisdiction.
Yes,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it does vary by jurisdiction. We're on the Willow Creek that opened in February, right before COVID. We're able to get the city of Hillsborough to give us a 0.85 to 1 parking ratio. So that worked very well because our initial designs was going to be 48 units. And the developer partner said, oh, that's too many parking spaces. So we went with city of Hillsborough and they listened and were able to increase from 48 to 120 units because they gave us 0.85 to 1 parking ratio. Now, every development you've seen today would have to work with their jurisdictions for similar, what's the word? Accommodations or permissions, yeah. But it is on top of our mind. We have experience doing making such demands, sometimes not successfully.
Now, some of these projects are in urban unincorporated Washington County, subject to our rules.
So it'd be LU2, yeah.
Yes, and there is a parking reduction allowed for affordable housing development within unincorporated Washington County. I believe
Right.
there is some flexibility to a density bonus that's also allowed, that, different incentives within unincorporated Washington County. The city of Tigard also has a lot of incentives for development, particularly in their Tiger Triangle area where Phase 1 project is. The city had no parking requirement, so then it was really subject to the lenders and investors in the project to what they would underwrite it for, what kind of parking requirements they would underwrite for.
Make one final comment. So with parking, the challenge we run into is when we have larger bedroom units, it's harder to get less parking. So get 3 and 4 bedrooms, it's very hard to argue for 0.85 to 1 parking. So we have already made a decision that we prefer larger bedrooms in our local implementation strategy. So it's going to be a challenge. It's still doable, but yeah, we'll pursue it.
Other commissioners, questions or comments? Commissioner Willie?
Yeah, just to make sure I understand this, on slide 15, which is the portfolio dashboard, you're indicating we've got $85 million of bond funds and $165 million roughly leveraged. And so whose money is the $165 million?
So it's-
Low-income housing tax credits,
Okay.
some permanent loans, and some grants, and some state dollars.
So there's no private sector money, no contractor money in this, that they're investing in this?
The private sector money will be the permanent loan.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay. So it's good to see the, excuse me, the percentage of contracting for our minority women group, minority business group. It's good to see that. And I was concerned when we were first doing the IGAs that we would not be able to actually achieve a 15 or 20%, not because of the desire to do that. It was because I didn't think we had that many businesses that would qualify for minority-owned businesses in the construction industry. I've been since informed that actually that number could be considerably higher. For example, the convention center remodel, the prime contract was given to a African-American construction-owned company. And so,
Olas, yeah.
yeah, and he was able to then facilitate that into a significantly higher percentage of minority-owned businesses doing the contracting. And I just thought that it's almost like we put 20% out there, 30% out there, and then we say, good job. We did a good job. We got 20 to 30% outside, when really are there barriers into this whole process that restrict our minority-owned businesses from being the prime contractor on these projects, so that that number would be considerably higher? And it's just I'm sorry, but this whole thing is what somebody challenged me on a reverse thinking. We're thinking 20 to 30%, Yahoo, we win. And they were saying, no, why not 80 or 90% when you're reaching out? What barriers are you putting out there to inhibit our minority-owned businesses from being prime contractors? And I don't know, it's just a thought, but it's reverse thinking on my part, so.
Well, in the land of procurement, these aspirations, it's best to consider them a floor versus a ceiling. They tend to be both, though. Well, having come from Metro, where we had to work really hard to help encourage Colas Construction to seek that contract.
Yes, I understand that too.
I think we're on a very positive path with these goals.
I'm not suggesting we're not. I'm just was challenging the reverse.
Well, we definitely appreciate your comment, and I think it is something, that we can continue to push with our development partners as they work with contractors. I know like Walsh Construction, a very well-known construction firm, they've developed a community builders program as a way to kind of build the bench of minority and women emerging small business contractors as subcontractors, with the goal, that over time, they increase their experience and can, become a prime contractor. So thank you for your comment.
Yeah, again, I'm not trying to be negative about this. My thought process was just turned a little inside out by this conversation I was having.
Any other commissioner questions or thoughts?
Yeah,
Commissioner
a couple of
Rogers?
questions. Yeah, thank you. Again, Comey, I told Anya that we went and visited the field site, and what a wonderful job they were doing. And I again thank you while you're present there on that visitation. Very interesting project. I'm always a bit intrigued about how the financing works. You know that, and you don't have to answer that right now. Maybe nobody's interested but me, but I'd certainly like to know on all of those projects what ownership interest we as a minority shareholder of sorts, a partner in this, what we hold in, maybe nothing, but they have to have us as a partner in these projects. And as they cobble together the cash, they're also looking at huge tax credits. Since we don't have any reason to have them, I mean, we don't pay any taxes at the county, do they all go right to the developers? Because if I understood from Skip the other day when we were talking, I mean, the high percentage of this project is being, with that project, now I suspect others, is being financed by tax credits. And so Commissioner Willie's question about the private development money, they can take those credits to the bank. So that's a very interesting position, but it may be too much to answer right now, and you and I need to talk separately, but it's always fascinating how you put together the finances on these things.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Yeah, so the low-income housing tax credit was part of the 1986 Tax Reform Act. And what it is it's an IRS program that they delegated to the states. So in Oregon is the Oregon State Housing Finance Agency. And developers apply to them, they are awarded, and then they shop it with investors. So our typical project that we are presenting today, the low-income tax credit will be bringing in about 30% of the funding. The Metro bonds about 33, 35%. And then the next one will be the permanent loan, which will be, probably 25%. And the rest will be deferred developer fee, maybe Metro transit-oriented development if the development happens to be on transit, or grants, or they may go to contractors to defer payment. Some contractors, like the one in Forest Grove, the contractor is actually part of the development team, so they're going to be paid later. So in a nutshell, that's how the financing seems to be working. There's other types of tax credits that bring in more equity. That's called the 9% tax credit, but none of these proposals are asking for 9% tax credits. And we'll bring more details when we come back for final approval. We'll actually put up the sources and uses up on the screen and walk through that.
Just if I can follow up, I understood the other day, and you reiterated it, that the actual development, our developer has very little money into this compared to the 100% that one would have to put in. I mean, they've got a fraction because of all these tax credits and bond money. Who owns these? If all of a sudden they went bankrupt for some reason, or they decided they couldn't hold it any longer, do we have a title in these properties?
We do not. The owner will be a single asset entity. So it'd be, for Fields, the one in Tigard is the Fields Apartment Limited Partnership. And that partnership includes the bank that lent to the permanent loan, the tax credit investor, the developer, and also the housing authority. And we don't own it, but we have a deed restriction for 60 years of affordability on it. So if it goes upside down, we will be part of the people that get the notice and then invited to find a cure. So
what my interest is, obviously, Comey, is that if all of a sudden an LLC, and that's I think what they probably have in this particular case because there's many partners, if it was unable to carry on for some reason, 60 years, long beyond all of our lifespan. So if they were to go upside down, would we be able to retain it as a county for low-income housing? That's my interest.
Isn't there a bond
Yes.
covenant that stays with every single
Yes,
one of
every
these
single-
properties? So for 60 years, they have to remain as affordable housing.
That is correct, yes. It
That
is
doesn't go away if the
ownership change.
ownership changes.
Correct.
Thank you.
It's a deed
clarify,
deed restriction.
With each of these property concepts so far in these slides, the sponsor, as you have listed here, is that the proposed owner at this stage?
Yes, that's the owner at this stage. In the future, there will be what we call a general partner in the partnership. And that's, the lawyers can explain that better than I can.
And that gets on into
It gets
the
on.
timing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any other commissioner questions or comments? Well, I have a few. I'll start with a comment, and that is, going through the LIS, this was a real challenge for me, and I recall Comey and Shannon and Ruth saying, it'll work out, and in looking back on it now, and through the NOFA process, if I used an analogy, it's like you were getting me to be patient, that we're going to set up a process, so we're buying a bag of bulbs. And now going through this NOFA process, what a beautiful bouquet. I use that analogy to convey how impressed I am. You've done an incredible job, and I am grateful for it. It's just stunning, just absolutely stunning. I wish I didn't have a mask on so you could see how pleased I am with all of this. I do have a couple of questions. One,
I apologize.
One is, I remember when this bond, we were putting together the bond project and whatnot, and the jurisdictions asked that there be phase 1 project so that there could be learnings. And so you've proceeded with the phase 1 project in Tigard. The learnings from that, are those applicable now at this stage, or will those learnings be more applicable as you go through the next stages, through the concept endorsement and then the final approval and then the construction of each of these?
I think there have been some learnings as we've gone through the process so far. I mean, just in terms of developing our management strategies of the program as we go. So in terms of approving our processes for approving draw requests and getting tracking the minority and women emerging small business contracting over time. As we get all those policies and procedures established, we're learning with the phase 1 project, how best to do that, and so that will inform these future projects if they move forward. And then also with regard to how the funds are structured in the project. So with the tax credits, they have to be structured in a particular way. And so we've developed now with our legal counsel those loan agreements and restrictive covenants and all of that. And so that been a great learning process and something that will definitely inform the future projects as well.
So in the future, when there is an annual report from you to us and then onward to Metro, I would encourage you to include your story of phase 1 learnings. Because it was an aspect of the bond that was a little bit different. And I think you've got a good story to tell there. So thank you. One thing that I need a little bit of help to get my head around, as thrilled as I am with this bouquet, I'm struggling a little bit with the family size units. And I see in the slides, you've been very clear about studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, the availability of 3-bedroom units, and at least one of them even 4-bedroom units. Hooray! We know there's such a shortage of family-sized units. I guess what I'm looking for is your gut feel. You live and breathe affordable housing each and every day. I don't. Is your gut feel that we're doing, in my clumsy layman terminology, a good enough job of pushing the edge of the envelope?
Well, I can say I did look at, on that chart of projects and the family size units. So it has, within the 7 projects we've presented for you today, there's 286 family size in the 6 projects, 46 at Cooper Mountain. And so in terms of how those break out, so 55 of those are 3-bedroom units, and then the 3 4-bedroom units, so 58, are larger than 2 bedrooms. So definitely there's a great need for those larger units, I'd say, compared to what has been previously been constructed with regard to those unit sizes. I mean, that's a significant number of larger size units. They are more challenging they're more expensive to build, both when you're building them and then more expensive to manage over time. And so that's why they're so challenging to have in here. But so I guess I would say that is a significant number and significant increase over the previous projects prior to the bond.
Yeah, and it's very different from what you see from the marketplace. The studios produce the most dollars per square foot in the marketplace. So one bedrooms, occasionally twos. And we on the public side are going the opposite direction. So it's not the strongest economic argument,
Yep.
but it is a policy argument we are making because it's our money.
Compared to your goal.
Yeah, it's our goal, yeah.
There's a goal of 407 overall for the whole
Right.
bond program, and the subtotal here is 387. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
That's huge progress.
Mm-hmm.
But I turning it
Wanna
around.
push harder.
I was turning it around on myself and wondering, gee, have we put more pressure on ourselves for the funds to be allocated?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to have to try and squeeze more out of that? I'm feeling pretty darn good about this bouquet. But I wanted to check.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want the shoe to drop in the next phases. So thank you for helping me really realize those gains. I want to see if I've got the Metro lingo down. So we move towards concept endorsement, and then there's final approval, and then there's the actual construction, and then the opening and leasing. Is that about right? Hooray, I got it. Didn't expect to get it on the first try.
On that question, the timelines for where we are in those pieces, what do we look like there? Is it,
So if we go to the next step slide, could we show that again? Slide 16?
I just want to see that one more time.
Yep. So we'll have concept endorsement of the whole package.
September 1.
Will it be for the whole set? September 1?
Yes.
If
Yep.
your board, please,
This
it
whole
pleases your
set?
board, yeah.
Yep. And then it sounds like from concept endorsement, you then work things on a project by project basis to get the final approval for each project.
As they are ready.
Yeah, over this next 6 to 18 months. Wow.
And the reason I'm asking the question is, I think when I look back at where we were when the work was going on to pass the bond in the very first place, how do we get the message back to our constituents that this is what's happening with the money? And this is the progress. This is the bouquet, if you will, that's coming out of the investment that you put in. So I just want to make sure that that's part of the loop. I understand that that's going to be a relationship with Metro in communicating
Well, that
those.
leads to another one of my questions.
Okay, good.
There are annual reports due to Metro, and I know you articulated verbally that you're planning on bringing that information for us. Will that be information we'll see between now and the end of the year, or the first 6 months of next year? Any time horizon on that?
Right. So we would anticipate before the end of this calendar year. So the reports to Metro, since we're in contact with them on a project-by-project basis, the annual reports are really just tied to they're more financial in nature about, demonstrating that we've used the funds as intended.
But we have a story to tell there with regard to the voter accountability. So let me assure you, especially through my 12 years as a Metro counselor and multiple funding programs, both bonds and levies, those annual reports are going to be far more storytelling than I think we're thinking of at the moment. And there's huge power there. Yeah. So we should put our thinking cap on. We should plan on having that presented here. And I know Metro will have their staff and their oversight committee present to the council as well. we need to make sure we're getting mileage out of this awesome work that you've done. So, and when I wrote that question down, I was going to be looking out to make sure that we speak to equity engagement there. You've done it certainly through the sponsors, MWESB, and so forth. Another really tremendous story to tell. So, and then the last detail I wanted to highlight. I'm struggling with a concept because it's a very detailed thing, and it's not at a level I should be at. But I'm wondering how the system works. I noticed as we were going through a hot spell a few weeks ago that the beautiful Willow Creek Crossings project at 185th and Baseline, that the units, they look awesome and they're beautiful on the inside, but the windows are tilt-out windows and like this. And so if folks wanted to have an air conditioning unit, the portable air conditioning unit, not the window insert units, they had to jerry-rig something to put the vent in, and it didn't stay very well as opposed to like a vertical slider or a horizontal slider. And the reason I'm bringing this detail forward is because future forecasts with climate change and weather are talking about how we'll have variable weather, but we're expected to have higher temperature peaks. And so I don't know where you go with this comment, but I'm particularly through COVID, you know, we've got concerns with regard to seniors, those with asthma, other health conditions. I mean, every day we get an OHA report that reminds me about underlying health conditions. And so I've internalized that differently than I would have pre-COVID. So I don't know if that is a detail that the architects and the designers and the construction folks work through. But if you could just mention it and put that in your bag of tricks of how can we make sure that these are sustainable living solutions for the very people we're trying to help. So that's the last time I'll mention it.
Okay. Well, yeah, behind the scenes, we meet with the developers, we talk to them regularly, we negotiate all the time. I mean, they clearly will come back for more money, but we'll do the trade-offs and see how we push it. Yeah.
About such a detail.
Yeah.
So I'll close with this. You have exceeded my expectations with this NOFA, right? Months ago, you asked us to review the NOFA and get our heads around that. I am just absolutely thrilled, just absolutely thrilled. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Chair and Commissioners.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that we're more than well on our way to meeting our goals. It has been very ambitious. It still is ambitious goals in terms of units produced and the income levels that they're slated for. So it's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have one last topic for today, and that is a proposal for addressing. Oops, sorry, I didn't have my mic on. We're here for our last agenda topic today, and that is to talk about proposals for further supporting childcare during these times of COVID and utilizing the coronavirus relief fund contingency funding as a potential funding source. I'd like to turn it over to Tricia Martell, the division manager from Health and Human Services, our usual presenter in the form of Marnie Kyle. Marnie is on a well-deserved break from work, though we had to remind her yesterday, stop calling into meetings.
It's hard. It's hard. You know, there's so much happening always. Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. Good afternoon. So next slide, please. So as we've moved through COVID, we're continually coming up with challenges. And one of the challenges that many people have been discussing is childcare issues. We know now that schools are not going to be opening in person. That puts great strain on parents as they begin to really go through the next phase of caring for their children at home, as well as making sure that they're able to learn through distance learning. So we've been having conversations at a staff level with the superintendents. Chair Harrington and Marnie Kyle, the director, have had several meetings with superintendents, and it's really high on the agenda for the school districts, in addition to when can we get back to in-person learning and how are we going to keep the kids safe? What are we going to do now that we're not going to be going back to school? So they have been working to figure out how they can create slots for their teachers and staff to ensure and not dip into the capacity for the parents. So we do know we've been gathering data about what the issues are in terms of childcare, and we're hearing the same thing from our own staff. So as you know, there was a staff survey of our own employees here in Washington County. We know through our partner support, there's only about 70 to 80% of emergency childcare now in our community, so pre-COVID, and these are childcare systems that came back online after we came out of baseline and we're in phase 1. They're under different regulations for childcare. They cannot have as many children. They need to have children have more space, and so they've been struggling like other businesses to be sustainable and to recover from the impact of COVID. At a more urgent level, there's only 700 spots in the county for school-aged children. We expect the kids to be in school, so not really thinking that we would need to have childcare or learning supports for children 5 to 12, for example. And the other big worry is parents don't usually need to consider or pay for school-aged children. So we've been having conversations, sharing, as I mentioned, Marnie Kyle, my staff, and the Children Early Learning Hub partners have really been talking about what could we do. We do know that there's one program that's underutilized, the, let's see if I get it right, employment-related daycare funds through DHS. And so we're working to get the word out, and these would be for lower-income families. The funds, they're trying to make the process or help people through the process. As we know, state applications can be quite difficult. And if they do apply within the next 2 months, they may be able to get 100% subsidy and not have to do co-pays. So lots of conversations about how we can help parents. Next slide, please. And working with Chair Harrington, the CAO's office, Marnie Kyle, our director, really determined that there's 2 goals that we're trying to achieve here with support for parents to return to work. Our first goal was realized with $4 million of the CARES funds to stabilize the current system. We will be opening applications for that $4 million for child care centers tomorrow. We're excited to finally get that going. And that's to improve the stability of those emergency child care systems open right now. And then the second priority has really become expanding the system capacity. So how could we do that? And one consideration for the board is to develop a proposal to use contingency funds to not only increase the stabilization goal, but the expand system goal. Next slide, please. So of the $4 million, we anticipate approximately 380 providers of our 560 current licensed providers would receive a grant close to $10,000 to support and mitigate what has occurred with COVID. If there was an additional 1.5 million, that could support the additional providers that are out there, the additional emergency providers. Our first pass at the 4 million was to think about equity. So I think many of you saw that the focus would be on home care providers because our home care providers often care for more low-income children, children from communities of color, and we probably would not be providing support to some of the larger chain providers. So that additional 1.5 million could increase capacity with those other providers that we have on board. And just at this point, we're not they're not licensing a lot of new childcare. So there's a lot of workarounds we're having to do to figure this out. So you had to apply to be an emergency childcare provider, and there were some state funds that some of those providers got. Next slide, please. So goal 2 is the newer arena that we're trying to move into and expanding the community-wide school-age learning support. So looking at could contingency funds of up to $5.5 million be used to expand services again for those ages 5 to 12 with the anticipation about 1,200 to 1,800 with that funding. We've heard from school districts, we've heard from providers like Champion, THPRD and YMCA, that they're poised to try to create this. They need resources to support that. The school districts, for example, are looking at space, unused space, and others are looking at unused space to keep the costs down. But this, again, any child care provider, any learning support system will be more costly because we need to keep the number of kids in the cohorts small, and we need to space them out. We would suggest that we put in some requirements if we were to do this, that it would need to include the learning support. That's what parents are really needing help with, not just the childcare, but how do we make sure that kids can learn virtually. Just having a computer at home and sitting in front of a computer is not going to work for some kids. And if parents aren't there to help them or they can't help them, what other supports could we find in the community? We would encourage that there's some requirements for low-income families. Again, it could be for those families that are eligible for the EDR, no, I forgot the acronyms. There's so many acronyms now. Yes, for the DHS payments. Or it could be something else, and there's a proposal here. Supporting employees, so the subsidizing what we would call more lower income, up to 300% of FPL. Because again, parents had not planned for this. They didn't. It's not part of their regular budget, and some folks in a lower income bracket would need support. And THPRD in particular said that that would be a really important part of the funding that would help them to expand as far as possible. So that is the end of the staff report. And again, I can answer any questions about what we've been talking about, what we've been hearing. Catherine as well.
So where we've been at, here we are at the end of August. And when we were on this COVID journey in May, we were hoping that by now we would be in phase 2. And we're not. And our COVID case numbers are still, the way I've been putting it, in the toilet. But we need to help our community with the launch of the academic school year and help ensure that parents are able to retain their employment. And those two go together. So this will support not only families and our students, but also our businesses. We do have a deadline breathing down our neck, and that is September 14th. That is the date by which all of our school districts are starting their academic year with comprehensive distance learning. And at this stage, none of them are really thinking about in-classroom opening. The earliest is November, but it will likely turn into a January timeframe. So given all those pressures, our team, the public health team and the early learning experts have done a terrific job of putting this proposal before us, of identifying what we might be able to accomplish. We've heard from partners. I know I've had conversations with THPRD board members for weeks, with school district members for weeks. The pressure is real and it's high. I want to commend our team for putting this proposal together, and I would hope that you, my colleagues, would support our staff's recommendation to us. And with that, Commissioner, comments and questions?
Yeah, would you
Commissioner
put
Willie.
that last slide back up, please?
We can't see it yet. Do 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 do. It's Jeopardy,
In
right?
lieu of the humming, just let you know that Tricia and I are making a presentation at Rotary this Thursday, and she'll be presenting not this information, but certainly a COVID update, along with some other things that we'll be talking about. But so I appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and since Marnie bailed and handed you that, I appreciate
We
you doing
cover each other. I'm going to take a little bit of time off next time, and she'll cover me.
it. All right.
Well, in fact, Tricia was on camera this morning in front of the media, once again, trying to help ensure that our community knows about best practices.
It was really hard to say, 7 o'clock, you want to do a live event? And I was like, no, but I can't say no. I know, you can't. It's live. And live. Live's always a little more fearful. Well, how will I goof that up? Questions on this?
Well, I support the concept. I'm just having a little bit of trouble with how quickly this has come together. I'd like to see a little bit more meat on this as to specifically how we'd go about doing this. I've been in conversation for the past several weeks about this very issue. I also met 6 weeks ago with Superintendent Scott with the Hillsborough School District, talking about their plan that they had at that point in time. And again, they just didn't have enough structure to it to be able to actually ask for some money specifically on that. But so I'm supportive of this. I need to have more structure before I'm willing to throw $5 million at this.
So none of our partners as listed here, including the school districts, are going to, the real issue for them is funding.
Yeah, so I've asked staff to try to get really some concrete information from each of the districts of where they are at, because as you know, and as you're hearing, and many of you have spoken to your own school districts, they've been working at it. THPRD did not give us a funding amount. They really just gave us an outline of what they'd like to do in terms of full day, partial day, part week, and really having a cadre of options for different families. And when they priced it out, they felt that the price point was so high that, they wouldn't be able to attract enough to put it together. So we're working on numbers for you in terms of fiscal. One of the goals for many of the agencies is how can we use space that we can't use for other things, event space that's not being used, that will keep the cost down, that will help a lot, because as we all know, rent is very expensive. And then what are their startup costs? What is their break point even? And just in the last days, we still continue to get updates from OHA about what the child care guidance is, how many kids, how much space, how many cohorts. So they're all trying to figure that out as much as we're trying to help them.
So what I also know from the team is that before they will be releasing the funds for any of the partners and the school districts, they're already working the due diligence on these details. And I have every faith in our team. Just like I haven't seen our team send the $4 million child care details, but I have had the benefit of seeing this, and they've put the infrastructure in place. That's what they do best. And I know we can rely upon that.
But definitely, we can provide you whatever details that you're looking for, Commissioner Willie.
I'd like to chime in on that too. Some random thoughts. When we originally put the buckets together, we understood that childcare was a critical component of what we needed to do. This is going to serve 1,200, 1,800 kids, which sounds like a lot, but it's very small. It wouldn't even cover the districts that I happen to represent in this particular area. I'm concerned that we're going to put some money in. It's going to evaporate by the end of December. We all know that. I'm not sure what the plan for January through June of next year is. And again, these are all random. There's no right answer to this because I support the childcare, but I'm thinking how many businesses, if they go out between now and January 1, parents not only will be looking for childcare, they'll be looking for money to sustain themselves. So I'm kind of with Commissioner Willie. I don't know where Commissioner Treese is because I know she's been actively involved in the business group as well. But I know from talking with businesses in this area, this quadrant of the county, that they're still suffering. They're not. I don't know how many are going to be coming back up. And if this thing sustains itself for another 3 or 4 months, we got a lot bigger problems. So again, I'm trying to weigh it out in my own mind. I read this the other day and said, is this the right place? I don't know. I mean, we held back that $7.5 million because we knew there would be things that we didn't anticipate. This is certainly a worthy one, certainly a good one. So are businesses who are saying, I'm trying to get a little loan to sustain myself so I can be around to employ the parents of these kids. So I don't know, just random thoughts. There isn't a right, there isn't a wrong answer. I just know that there's limited funds that are going to evaporate in a few months. So if I had my druthers, I'd have us expand on this topic a bit at another meeting and give us some thoughts and some feedback and let us weigh the options. So that's just my comments.
So thank you, Commissioner Rogers. This is Commissioner Treese. And a couple things I'd just like to add to your thought process as we're going through this. In my other life as Executive Director of Westside Economic Alliance, I met with Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici yesterday with other people in that same world. This was the #1 topic that people talked about the entire time. We knew entering into this that childcare was going to be an issue. For me individually, the degree of need has increased exponentially. And it's been in part because we entered into this pandemic with a short-term mentality. That was one piece, thinking that kids would certainly be in school in the fall, and school is a big piece, obviously, of this daycare situation. We didn't expect the extended nature. We didn't expect the pressure on parents to provide the educational services that they do. We didn't expect teachers to be in a situation where they didn't have daycare to be able to provide the educational piece to everybody else plus their own children. So from my perspective, the group that put together our CARES funding initial package, it was brilliant that you saved $7.5 million. I think that as we look at this piece, this is exactly what that money should be going toward, is to childcare. We didn't know when that budget was put together what the impact was going to be. And I am continually, my eyes just get more and more and more wide thinking about what the impacts are. Our county administrator talked about that as one of the biggest issues that she's facing in today's world. My grandchildren are facing that. My husband's going to be working with them in terms of distance learning. This is a problem that affects the economics of the businesses to be able to do their work as well. So in my thought process, I believe that by providing this money, by getting it started, we are in fact helping the businesses to a great degree, and we're addressing what the issues are. And as Commissioner Rogers said, we know we need to spend this money by December. So, and in December, and well, in November, late October, November, and December, we're going to be looking at whether or not we're going to be in this situation into the future. We heard Governor Brown say that right now where we are in our metrics, we wouldn't be into the classroom again for 200 days. That's the whole push, is to change that so that we are in the classrooms in January. I believe that this is the right thing to do with this contingency fund, and I also believe now is the time to do it because we don't have any more time.
I follow up because I appreciate your perspective. If you had a crystal ball and we knew in January that kids still would not be back in school, or February they still wouldn't be back in school, and that we were still in some sort of a limited lockdown on businesses, would we still spend the money, Commissioner Treese, in the same way, or would you have a different answer?
Commissioner Rogers, I would still spend the money because we know we have the problem now, and we have to address the problem now. We are also working to get those kids back into the classroom with safely. I want to make sure that I underscore that piece. They need to be in the classroom safely. So this is a decision that's not without risk. It's a decision where we are looking at what our future is going to be until the end of the year and trying to make the best decisions that we can make. In my estimation, it's spending this money on these issues to help our businesses, to help our families, to help our school districts.
Yeah, I agree completely with Commissioner Treese. We really have to impress on everyone, and the governor was trying to do this the other day, is that if more of us, if the overwhelming, was it 90-some% of us would use face masks consistently in public, in appropriate public and private settings, in the business world, as well as in restaurants and elsewhere, we do all the things we're supposed to be doing, we can bend this curve, we can get the transmission rate down to a point where we might be able to open in January, and as opposed to April or May. And we have to deal with the problem that's clear and immediate, and hope that betting on the come, that there will be additional dollars coming following the election, that people will do better, that those of us who are still being pig-headed about this COVID thing realize that this is not a partisan issue. This is, use your brains, use your head, look at the science, let's wake up. You know, I mean, America, we need to get serious here, and we've done reasonably well in Oregon, but we need to be doing better. And let's think about our kids, let's think about our grandkids. Let's get these schools back to the usual kind of format by January, hopefully. Let's not let this be stalled out. We all need to, so if we do that, betting on that come, betting on additional funding, in the meantime, we can't let this all, we can't have this problem unresolved. We can make a meaningful dent in this issue, which is a key issue, and I agree completely with with the reasoning that I've heard from Commissioner Treese. And this is a business issue, and it goes back to what I said way back in the beginning when we first started. There is no dichotomy between doing business and this COVID thing. We cannot have a good business climate as long as we are not solving this COVID problem. So we need to do that. We need to spend money solving a clear and immediate danger to our kids, if you want to use that kind of a language. And we all need to be doing better going forward so that we can bend this curve and have school return.
So if I could just weigh back in a little bit, my question and my challenge was not if this is a good place to spend money. And it's not about the importance of providing some assistance to our child care industry because this is the top issue. There's no question about that. My question was, we're willing to spend $5.5 million to use the expand services to approximately 1,200 to 1,800 children. So you do the math real quick, and that ranges from $4,600 to $3,000 per child. And I'm thinking, that's a lot of money. So are we using this money to help Champion and THPRD and YMCA get their facilities up to speed so that they can take on these additional childcare burdens? Or are we providing childcare credits to the families who need it? Or are we doing both?
Staff would recommend a dual approach. We need to support the organizations. They've got to get running startup costs. They've got to really put together a program. But as we mentioned, equity is at the heart of the work of the county and the heart of the work of HHS. And so some subsidies would be appropriate so that we could ensure. So if we even look at our own workforce, many of our lower income workers are at the front desks and front counters that are open. They can't work virtually, so we know they need childcare and they need help with learning supports for their children. So that's why we recommended, for the lower income employees up to 300, we consider some kind of stipend. This is a very rough estimate. We can start to refine it and come back to you, and perhaps, Commissioner Willie, it really is more children that we could serve once we get the numbers, better numbers for you.
Well, I think that's what I'd like to see. And again, this concept doesn't bother me other than the fact that it's a 30,000-foot running snapshot of what this could look like. I would like to have better information about how much do those three organizations plus others, if possible, how much do they need to facilitate a group of kids? And certainly, I don't know how many thousand kids we have in our school districts in the county.
86,000.
It's a lot. It's a lot more than 12 to 1,800. Yep. And so,
You've got that information. I sent it to everybody.
so what I think my point is I would like to have a little bit bigger impact for a larger number of school children that we would be able to facilitate here. And I need more specificity in this before I'm ready to move on. That doesn't mean I'm not supportive of $5.5 million going to child care and the $7 million in the contingency fund doing both of these steps. I'm totally into that. I just want more specificity in this before we move ahead.
Commissioner Willie, I appreciate your level of support, and I'm confident that you're behind the need that's there, that we have to address the need. I think we're a little bit in the same situation where we were, seems like 2 years ago, when we were talking about the small business relief funds, that we have to get things out as quickly as possible to meet the September 14th date. The other thing that I don't believe is on here in terms is the level of integration with the school districts. That's pretty high as well. So I understand that you'd like to see more, and I agree. I think that there's a bunch of people in the background that are pedaling as fast as they can, and we've had that experience, you and me.
Well, and I completely agree with that. I would then contend that we could give this a tentative approval subject to better information coming. And so we're not waiting for another week because this is on the board agenda in a couple hours.
No, if we don't give it a thumbs up here, it's pulled off of the agenda.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that it's on the agenda, so we could do that, but I'm going to add the caveat that I still want to see the final design on it.
Chair Harrington, Commissioner Willie, I'm not sure of protocol, so please tell me if I'm not following protocol, but one avenue, am I? Okay, thank you. County Council. One suggestion is right now we are in work session, so this is information, this is an action item before the commissioners at the board meeting. What we have heard this evening is spirit of timing with the school year right around the corner. So to the point, I think the path that Commissioner Willie was maybe going down, it could be to approve the allocation of funds and then staff follow up with a staff report providing the framework of how this would work after we work with our partners on what the structure and system would be and get input from the board.
That makes sense to me.
I'm okay.
Where's Commissioner Rogers?
Well, as I said, there's no right or wrong reason. Our answer to this, I understand that these organizations would like us to target the money, and I suspect if we went back out to the cities and we went back out to your business community, they'd say, "How about targeting some of that 7.5 million?" But as I said early on, when we formed those buckets, we agreed that child support was a huge issue. And I certainly don't step back from that at all. I just feel a little uneasy that I don't know how this is all working and how the school districts, particularly mine and the Sherwood Tiger 12, and how they're going to receive funds from this for their activities. And I'm trusting that my colleagues there who are on the business side have felt that this is a higher priority than the more business loans. So I'll respect that. So I still would like a week or so to think about it. I'm not opposed to it, though.
Yeah, unfortunately, honestly, Roy, this jury, I don't think we have a week. We've got school starting in 2 weeks.
14th, yeah.
Yeah, we need to roll on this. I completely agree with that part.
Well, I saw 3 that were for it, so I certainly am not going to oppose them. So
what do you think is next, Ms. Angie?
Based on what I'm hearing, that it would still be on the board meeting for tonight for discussion of authorizing the funds. And then we would follow up with the staff report as far as what the framework would be.
Great. So we'll take a vote tonight on the action item.
So we're all thumbs up. Is that correct? For tonight?
We've got 3 thumbs up.
Yeah. 4. And Roy, your picture's not up.
well, I think it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Good job. All right, that's it for our.
But before we leave, I want to say thank you to the chair, thank you to the committee for the work that's been done, because I think that you recognized a gap and really worked hard to get that gap filled. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I agree, thank you.
Okay, so that's it for our work session agenda. We'll convene in our business meeting at 6:30. Thank you.